or something. Was
I
it
heard
called?
my voice just now.
Well,
That's
it
my
was your
phone
voice,
ringing.
Cheryl.
Sorry.
It's officially an NFT that somebody else owns now. So you no
Okay.
longer own your own voice.
I can copyright that immediately. That's mine, copyright, okay? Make as much money as you want and just give me some royalty.
You'll just be like YouTube. After we actually make some waves, you'll come and take it like the music labels do.
Yes. I won't pursue now. Just do it. Yeah. Hype it up and then I'll do something later. John Madison is in the room too.
Okay.
Dr. Francine is here. Aaron is here.
Okay.
Aaron.
Okay. Oh my
yay.
goodness, whole lot of people
Meow,
there.
meow, meow.
Ben is here.
Dr. Francine, I invited you up. There she goes. Okay, Elle, I invited you up, Elle.
Yep.
You might need to go out and back in. As sometimes happens,
Yep.
you know, we're coming up on
Aaron Smith. Mm-hmm.
I just got Aaron. What is that Mercury
We got Ben
retrograde
down
when
there too.
apparent? Yeah, I got Ben already. But when Mercury retrograde kicks in any day now, and everything's going to go haywire.
Gonna go haywire?
We can test it out. Okay, is everybody ready?
Can it go more haywire than it already is?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just the This is the parking lot barbecue before the Super Bowl of haywireness. This is the tailgate party, part of the program, and before it gets full crazy.
Okay.
So, the biggest headline at this very moment, before I jump into it, does anyone have a hot headline from their part of the world? Professionally, geographically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, metaphorically, metaphysically?
You know, Taylor, I must have
There
gotten
is a
all.
higher tax in the UK now. I don't know what tweeted it to techniques around the world, but they're raising the tax in the UK. Boris Johnson says so. That's what really
on what?
Social
raising taxes
social.
on tech?
No,
on social
no,
media.
as in like give me a second to find the article, please.
Do we have a new classmate on stage today? Sana?
Oh, Sana. Yes.
Sana.
Hi, Cheryl.
Sana came up before.
Hello. Hi, Tammy.
Okay,
Hi.
for social care, basically. Yeah, income tax.
Okay.
It's on Telegraph. So yeah, by the Telegraph.
Okay, because there was a headline like on Thursday or Friday last week that Thailand now has a tax on tech, and it was significant but not overwhelming, and the tech companies will probably just pay it and not think too much about it. But from a Thai perspective, it's some good easy money. Why didn't we think of that earlier?
Was that from all the other countries, like the import one?
No, for example, all foreign tech companies who want to do business in Thailand now have to give up part of their revenue. It's something like
I'm happy about that. To be honest, I feel like all countries from that side should do
3%. That's very little.
But in comparison to what they actually
not
make, it might be quite a lot. To be fair.
Yeah. So, for example, if you own a and so far they're up to about 100 different tech companies that they listed, like Airbnb and Booking.com, all of the travel
Didn't
companies.
say it was
and
about
Google
20 billion, or did I read that headline wrong? Like,
I'm not quite sure if they put a
It may
figure
have
on
been
it,
20 billion
what they expect it to be,
but not dollars.
Yeah. Not
Tyler,
exactly. If it was 20 billion, that would be
Is this the best you
dollars.
can go for your mic?
Which is yes.
No, it's not in and out, but it's
again?
better, but it's still softer than Lakeisha.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll deal with it. Let me know if it needs to be louder. I don't know how I can. Let me check one thing real fast. But I wanted to see if anyone had a particularly hot head. I can turn up the volume. I don't know if that will help.
Good.
Though.
Yeah,
very
louder.
good. Very good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
So I tweeted out a headline that I still don't quite understand, but it says that the barbecue plaza is the the world's first virtual restaurant. And it was created in partnership with AIS, which is the leading Thai telecommunications company, and then a retail conglomerate. But I don't understand whether it's just a cloud kitchen or I don't know what it is. I don't know what makes it special enough to be the world's first virtual restaurant, but that hit the press, I think, earlier today or late last night.
I've not heard anything. It's in
I saw
Thailand
that one and I had a lot of questions.
a virtual restaurant in Thailand.
Say that
You're
again?
saying the headline is about a virtual restaurant in Thailand?
Yeah, it says that it's the world's first virtual restaurant called Barbecue Plaza, and it was unveiled. But again, I don't get it. And Chris, you said you saw the headline also?
Yeah, and I had so many questions because I'm like, I see a physical building, and it says Barbecue
Yeah.
Plaza. So how's that a
It's
virtual restaurant?
there's a popular place called Barbecue Plaza across the street from Central in Suratani. It's called Barbecue Plaza. I don't know if it's the same
Interesting.
one.
Well, this is virtual, so I don't know if that's just kind of a digital version of. I have no idea.
Did
But
you
I'm
get
glad that
anything
I'm
to
not the only
eat
one.
at
I've
the
got the headline.
virtual barbecue plaza?
Hold on, I got the headline right here. Here we go.
Make sure it's yummy.
It says
Better be.
AIS joins Barbecue Plaza open a virtual restaurant first time in Thailand on the V Avenue platform. Chief Executive Officer General. This is it's very difficult to translate Thai into English, and I'm using a translator, and the translator is freaking out. But it's technically is a real restaurant. There is a restaurant called Barbecue Plaza. So it's what the heck they're talking about with a virtual restaurant is really not yet clear. There's a building. I think what it is inside the building, there's a virtual space. There's a virtual mall. There's a virtual mall working with lead retail groups to create a virtual shopping experience and create opportunities and new areas in order to use digital technologies for a variety of benefits. Therefore, we've expanded our services from retail to add restaurant business partners like food or barbecue plaza. It's like all things Thai. It's not clear. It's really confusing in a way that's deeper than your typical confusion. So we don't know that maybe they're either 20 years ahead of us or who it's hard to even figure out what that is about. So the biggest news story at the moment is that Apple 7 will be announced almost certainly next week on Tuesday, September 14th, with a live stream. Michael, put it on your calendar.
Meow, meow, meow.
Did he just meow meow meow? Michael, if you would please help us MC the live stream
100%
for the
here.
Apple. That will be next Tuesday, right about now, and or maybe an hour from right now, a week from tomorrow, and it will be the annual iPhone launch event. And it will also be Apple Watch 7 will be part of that event, which should have a flat screen and a little bit larger and also delayed. The new production issues may cause the new models to ship late or in limited quantities. And the iPhone should have an always on screen and a bigger battery and a little better camera and a little faster processor and all that typical stuff. Nothing truly remarkable with the new iPhone. But yeah, here it comes. So then Google's also expecting to do a Google Pixel 6 smartphone event right around the same time. And as they both get ready for the big holiday, shopping season. So the second biggest article is that Apple made an unforced error in trying to tackle the child abuse safety issues without soliciting expert advice while adhering to its annual iOS release schedule. And so why didn't they get outside advice first? Why did they? And this is a real puzzle. Basically, throw a whole bunch of ice water on everybody saying, hey, we're just going to start scanning your devices for child abuse images. And a whole bunch of security experts and legal folks and Edward Snowden said, what the hell are you thinking, Apple? Are you fucking out of your goddamn mind? And now Apple's backtracking and saying, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to rethink it. We're going to go back to the drawing board. And it's a bit concerning because, as Edward Snowden says today, I agree now that Apple's has created this unforced error by trying to do this without soliciting any expert advice, which they could have. Here's the weird thing. They could have talked to a bunch of security folks. Almost unanimously, the security folks said, this is really crazy, Apple, that you're doing this. And the fact that they're now backtracking, that's why they're calling it an unforced error. They could have just went to these folks non-publicly, and they would have told Apple in that correspondence that, no, you shouldn't do this, and they could have avoided this whole snafu, this kind of public. Unless, this is what's so weird. Was Apple actually trying to they wanted to publicly announce that this might be coming? Just like Amazon last week on Thursday or Friday also decided to publicly announce that they will be doing something similar, which is scanning content on Amazon's cloud network, which is called AWS, Amazon Web Services. Why are they announcing this publicly? Again, if the intention is to catch child traffickers, why are they knocking on the door? Excuse me, sir. Next week, we're going to come back and see if you've got children hiding under your bed. We'll be back next week. What the hell are you thinking? Why even do that publicly in both cases? And why are they doing it simultaneously? And it has led some people like Balaji, who used to work at Andreessen Horowitz, who did a fantastic podcast with Sam Harris last week, that basically what's happening in the US is very analogous to what's happening in China at the moment, where China, in very China fashion, is just telling everybody very transparently, we're taking over all the data. If you're a tech company, your data is now our data. And thank you very much. And we're looking at all of it, and we're very interested in all of it. And we will, and that's one way to do it. That's how China does do things when it comes to tech. America is very different. They do it in this very back channel, overly legal, overly litigious, back and forth between the courts and public, and the government doesn't show that it's actually driving what's going on from behind, though it does seem, as evidenced by the fact that Apple and Amazon are doing this simultaneously, that the coincidence of them both doing something that is so antithetical to let me put it this way, they both, Amazon Web Services and Apple, both could have done this years ago, years and years and years ago, and they haven't, because it's antithetical to what they've done up until now. So the fact that they're doing it at all, let alone simultaneously, let alone at both announcing it publicly, seems to indicate that it's perhaps the government is involved, that this is actually being done at the request of the government. And Balaji, in the podcast with Sam Harris, says that this whole big brouhaha about antitrust between FANG, which is Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Google, is this awkward dance and courtship that's happening with the Capitol Hill. Essentially, the end result of that whole negotiation will be the government having everything they want from these tech companies in terms of access to all of the data, just like is happening in China. But in China, as we know, they just come right out and say it. We're taking all the data. End of discussion. Simple as that. nice meeting. See you next week. And in America, it's this: the the government can't come out and show that it's doing this in the same way that the Chinese government can. It's done in this much more kind of underhanded way. So that's the conspiracy theory in the works, and that's what we're watching Apple's next moves and all the big companies' next moves with a lot of curiosity, with sort of that conspiracy theory in
You
mind.
know, if you have nothing to do today and it's Labor Day where you are, that podcast by Balaji and Sam Harris it's a 4-hour listen, which is why I'm saying you need a long period of time. But it is absolutely amazing because Balaji actually has a solution for all of this, and
Yeah,
his solution is to reconstitute the government. You know, he's big into blockchain technology and decentralization. And so he has a very well thought out theory about decentralizing government uh, services and everything and putting them on the blockchain and creating a completely different kind of government for the world that we live in. It's so worth listening to. And although I don't
yeah.
think that's going to happen because it's a near impossible task, you would have to like blow up the government and start over, which is something I'm not averse to. Um, uh, but I'll probably get thrown off Clubhouse for even saying that. But but aspects of it will happen, and aspects of it are already happening and in the works.
Well, I think I love what you're saying as always, Dr. Francine. But and I think you might agree, and well, certainly the Scandinavians look to Estonia as a place that would be eager to even attempt that.
Estonia
And
and
and then
Iceland are moving, Estonia
mhm,
and Iceland, because they are small countries and it's a lot
yeah,
easier for them to do it, are both moving in that direction.
right. And I think that's the opportunity is once somebody is doing it and the benefits become material and understandable and
Tyler,
non-conceptual, kind of,
Tyler, your mic is gone. I
yes.
can barely hear you, buddy.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, it's been cutting in and out like quite
Oh,
some time now.
sounds kind of hollow,
It
like
just sounds that
Yeah,
you're a
echoing.
bit far away.
So Faraz hosted a room this evening, or no, a couple evenings ago, where there's a gentleman who's proposing running an AI for president. Uh, I don't know if anybody else caught that room, but in that room, we started looking at all the issues, and I think we started maybe pushing it towards like maybe they should start with the city, and maybe see what AI would do if it had to write the Constitution, and I don't know. It's definitely very interesting to see how maybe technology would have crafted that document given what today's like versus 1776.
the
Well, the
level of
problem with
bias in
AI is
AI. Wait, the level of
it
bias in AI today is like already so prevalent that I feel it's not going to be too far off, honestly. And not just the what's written, the way it would be enacted as well. And yeah, so I don't really see AI as like a solution for human problems, honestly.
I completely agree with you. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of study being going on AI bias, but it depends on who trains the AI, how it turns out.
Yeah, but many of these companies aren't necessarily the social or equitable. Like most of these companies are even made just for profit. So that hasn't anything to do with, taking care of humans and, how our laws regulate us and allow us to like just even etiquette, social etiquette and stuff. You can't teach that to an AI. AI is yes, it doesn't it seems a bit far off when we start speaking about the intricacies of human interaction.
Well, and the other thing is that as Dekai points out, AI will become autonomous because no one will understand the machine that built the machine that built the machine that built the machine. And then the question becomes, how do you govern what data and what feeds do you train the beast on, and how do you detect bias and how do you deal with it? So it really just shifts the governance model from the current into one of governing what data is ingested, how it's managed, what bias is detected, how it's detected, how decisions are made about intervening when bias is detected. And it could paradoxically further centralize governance rather than distribute it.
Yeah, my end
Yeah,
game
I
with this
agree.
AI sources would more so be AI protesting for rights just as humans rather than AI helping humans the best way that they possibly can. Because, yeah, if we speak about the machine that built the machine that built the machine, yeah, further down the line, it's going to be a sort of consciousness of AI. And I feel like even humans would say they've helped us for so many generations. Why don't we give them, parity in the sense?
I heard it
But
was
but
get
that
overlap.
isn't
eventually.
that's not what Balaji is suggesting. I mean, we've gone down the AI rabbit hole. Balaji was going down the DeFi, the decentralized and blockchain rabbit hole. Those are different rabbit holes.
Yeah. It's worth a listen, as Francine's saying, and it's about how to structure power. To really oversimplify it, and that he thinks the big battle in 2021 is kind of the typical government structure of things, which the people have lost a lot of trust in those institutions, and that blockchain has solved the issue of trust essentially. And so, why aren't we using these innovations that can be used in a governance fashion? And it's worth.
Blockchain could draw school districts, for instance, so that they had level tax bases, or could draw legislative districts so that they would have, equal tax bases.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would definitely
it's
give it a
totally worth
listen.
a listen.
Yeah, I can see. I can see where carving out things like small claims court judicial judgments, where redistricting for schools or voting, targeted use cases could operate off the same stack and the same data inputs, but to take it beyond individual use cases that have their own human governance. I find that I'm sure someone's going to experiment with that, but I find it to be very troublesome.
All right. So is
Yeah, and even with the I'm sorry,
no, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Sana. I was just gonna check. Is my mic better now? Okay. So
Yeah,
go ahead,
yeah, it's
Sana,
better.
and then we'll
Yes.
move on to the next article.
So it's same thing with the law and ethics and moral when it comes to cyber governance and cybersecurity law. So when you come and you add this together, so I think it's going to be a lot of information overlapping, and not only that, and how we can adjust data in the middle. So I think it's gonna be like a lot, just like John when he mentioned. I agree with him. It's going to be a lot of studies.
Okay. So the next article is from TechCrunch, Apple. Oh yeah, we covered that. The next one is researchers uncover a vulnerability in Bluetooth. So again, your daily update that you have no security. Then the next one's from the New York Times. Regulators rush to catch up with DeFi startups and crypto-backed lenders like BlockFi, which now touts $10 billion in assets, 450,000 clients, and licenses in 28 states. And their headquarters is across the river from Wall Street and all the Wall Street institutions. And they've got, as they say, 10 billion under assets and 450,000 clients, and a very fast-growing office, with a 30-year-old founder with 850 employees and growing like a weed. And BlockFi, among many things, to the advertisements that you'll see around Manhattan, for example, shows a credit card with a Bitcoin logo on it, and it's a Visa card, and it says earn up to 3.5% back on all of your purchase in Bitcoin. And it's a way to spend your Bitcoin and earn interest on your Bitcoin and earn money on the Bitcoin you spend. It's kind of, a traditional bank type of scenario, except it's all blockchain based essentially, and it's starting to worry the traditional banking and institutions because it's growing like crazy. And so now they are scrambling to try and catch up. That's the essence of the article from the New York Times. The headline again is Crypto's rapid move into banking elicits alarm in Washington. Honestly, no, it elicits alarm in Wall Street, and Wall Street is telling their friends in Washington that they're panicking and asking Washington to do something about it to protect their lazy asses. The boom.
Yeah, but this is five years after the
I know,
fact,
but that's
Tyler.
how long
I
it takes
mean,
the non-geeks to understand that, we as geeks have been working on this shit as we tend to do in our own little corners without trying to wave too much attention to. We don't want regulators to get involved. We don't want Washington, D.C. to know what we're doing. But eventually, whoever we're disrupting, in this case, Wall Street goes yelling to Washington, D.C. And that it took 5 years for that to happen. And now you have the headline in the New York Times.
yeah, crypto has become too much of an investment category and to be unregulated. And it wasn't even crypto that kicked everything off on the regulatory front. It was NFTs, because NFTs, the thought of going into Congress and explaining a piece of digital generative art and why it could have a value of $50 million is, it's like lost on everybody. Unless, again, you're down that rabbit hole
Yeah.
yourself, you don't understand even the reason to go down there.
The sub headline in this New York Times article says the boom in companies offering cryptocurrency loans and high yield deposits accounts is disrupting the banking industry and leaving regulators scrambling to catch up. So, but and this is just the nature of things with tech, where tech gets too far ahead, the competitor industry freaks out, goes and tells the Washington D.C. That they're panicking, and now you have the New York Times headline. So I will tweet this one out because that's also a good read, much like the podcast with Sam Harris and Biology. And then the third or fourth biggest, yes.
Tyler, do you want to check the audience?
Okay.
I see some
Alrighty,
regulars
thank you.
in. Faraz was
Okay.
in, but I don't
Thank
see
you.
him anymore.
Okay, so the next big one is from TechCrunch that a UK food sharing app called Olio raises $43 million. And my Swedish friends will know of Karma, which is a similar solution, which are both really interesting companies that make it. There's actually an incredible amount of food waste from restaurants, from supermarkets, from bakeries, very notably bakeries, including Starbucks. They get, and donut shops, all at the end of every night, basically have to trash a whole bunch of inventory that's really not usable the next day. And so it's in apparently 1/3 of all food that is produced ends up as waste, is the statistic that I've heard. So Olio in the UK and Karma in Stockholm are simultaneous, and there's probably others as well in other territories and regions, but both of them are doing really well. And Olio raising 43 million, that's a nice Series B. That means you have product market fit, and they're partnering with Tesco, adding 2.7 thousand stores to the service. That's a lot of stores. That's a lot of supermarkets. That's a lot of previously wasted food that used to go into a dumpster that's now going somewhere else. So I think it's one of those kinds of startups that has a positive impact on the planet, has a positive impact on many fronts, and kudos to the folks working on such a solution that is good on many fronts. The next one is about a Barcelona-based company called Factorial, which develops HR software for small and medium businesses, raises $80 million by Tiger Global at a $500 million valuation. And then the next one is from the New Yorker. It says, as libraries and schools transition to ebooks, the value of ebook vendors like Overdrive, which make money by licensing content to libraries, have skyrocketed. Increasingly, books are something that libraries do not own but borrow from the corporations that do own them. And in fact, you're going to have digital libraries where you can borrow books ostensibly. So it's an interesting article from the New Yorker. The next one's from the Wall Street Journal about a Harvard study. Details how automated hiring systems, now used by 99% of the top 500 companies, exclude more than 10 million qualified workers in the U.S. from hiring decisions. Why is this happening? Well, it turns out, according to this Harvard Business School study, it's because when people at the companies who are trying to hire more new team members, these individuals who are using these apps now, these automated tools, are not very tech-friendly individuals. This is kind of their first time using a piece of software, an automation app, and they are making errors, essentially. And the types of errors they are making is they give some interesting examples in this article. For example, let me just pull them up, where it says they're looking for, kitchen staff, but it also says, they must have good customer service skills, which kitchen staff don't really need. They're working in the kitchen. They're not in the front of the house. So the error is kind of a mutual. I think both sides need to acknowledge some guilt in this. The software developer who makes this automated tool needs to understand that they're building a tool for people who have never used apps of this kind, what we call enterprise apps, and make it really, really, really simple for restaurants to. You have to really make these apps incredibly, impossibly simple. And at the same time, people need to become better at using digital tools. So here's one, for example. It says some retail clerks won't make it past the hiring system if they don't have floor buffing experience. But yet, that isn't actually a requirement for the job they're hiring for. But they forgot to untick a box that says, what are the requirements you want for this position? Or it's buried under some settings or something, and they don't know how to go into those settings and pick off which of the skills are needed for this position. So they're ruling out people who are qualified for the jobs that they're making and shooting themselves in the foot, proverbially. So here's another example. It says hospitals that were scanning resumes of registered nurses for the term, quote unquote, computer programming, when what they need is someone who can enter patient data into a computer. Well, that's not computer programming, that's data entry. But because the person at the hospital doesn't know the nomenclature, the vernacular, they assume computer programming, they working in a hospital, not knowing what the word computer programming means, assume computer programming means data entry. It doesn't. So people writing resumes send in their resumes, as a PDF attachment. This automated system scans the PDF, notices, they didn't mention computer programming in the resume. Next, don't even review it. No need to continue. No need to call them in. They didn't meet the requirements. Well, computer programming shouldn't have been a requirement, and then the people who put up the job posting certainly didn't intentionally mean to rule out people who didn't put computer programming in there, but it's because they don't know what the word computer programming really actually means. They what they wanted was somebody who had data entry skills. And you can see the problem here is a bit of a communication breakdown. So yeah.
Now, I wanted to say something about just when it comes to even copywriting on job listings and stuff like that. Like, just as a tech writer myself, like when I see these listings and helping people with their CVs, I noticed that a lot of the listings, what they think they need, and it unqualifies so many young people as well from getting positions in these companies as well. Which is why, like, when it comes someone with just good tech savvy skills, and it's how should I say, aging out the people who aren't necessarily tech savvy today, and we're going to see a lot more of it in the next 5 years or so, maybe even 10 years.
Yeah. So the next one up is from CNBC. It says a look at the evolution of the App Store rules from 2009, when Apple refused to approve Google Voice, and then all the way to the recent antitrust changes. So there's been quite an evolution since 2009 with the App Store and its policies. The next one's from Wall Street Journal about online iBuyers like Opendoor, Zillow, and OfferPad have increased their home purchases in Q2 as virtual showings speed up the home buying process. And indeed, Opendoor is kicking ass. They bought 8,000 houses in the past quarter or 3 months, with another 8,000 that they have in a kind of an exclusive agreement to add to the platform if they so choose. And this is becoming a big thing of buying homes without ever seeing them on an app. And more people are doing this. And we had a bit of a chat about this when we met 8 hours ago, because these platforms like Opendoor and Zillow know that you are in the market to sell your house, and they know if you're in the market to buy a house, because these are data companies that use a lot of analytics, and they see your behaviors online and your cookies, and they know that you went to some website about buying paint to fix your house, and they know you are expecting to have a child, and they know all of these signals that indicate that you're likely to either buy or sell a home in the very near future, and they suck you in. And the traditional real estate agents at Century 21 have no effing clue you want to buy or sell a house unless you actually go to them and tell them. So this is yet another example of a tech company that knows how to use data, that knows how to use target marketing and retargeting and all of the tricks, and to get your business against a blindfolded, one-armed, wheelchaired, traditional industry that has no clue that this data even exists, of people who are expecting kids, that are painting their house, who are showing all of the signals that they are soon to be buying or selling a home. So they're just going to get steamrolled, like that. It's already starting. So there's also another aspect to this, which is who is buying these houses, because today it's humans and families. In the not so distant future, and it might even, I wouldn't doubt that it's happening now, and there's a lot of indications that it is happening now, BlackRock, which is the biggest fund, in the US at the moment, and Bill Gates are both reportedly buying up tons of real estate. They're quickly becoming the biggest real estate,
and paying cash.
Yeah, they're becoming the biggest
and
real estate
cash.
owners
That's
in America. So why are we to assume that Bill Gates, the biggest geek that ever put on a pair of glasses, isn't using data as part of his approach to this? And BlackRock, who also is wildly adept at all things tech, are we to assume that BlackRock and Bill Gates aren't using tech to figure out what to purchase and where to put their money? And when they're evaluating properties, aren't using data to figure that out? Because in the same way that Wall Street traders, the really adept ones, Goldman Sachs and what have you, have proprietary algorithms that help them figure out the signals that's, bring up to the surface the best investment opportunities based on hundreds of signals. why then wouldn't somebody employ the same methodology on buying homes and real estate inside of an app like this, where you could see, of course, humans do this too. When you, as a human, look through these apps, you say, oh, if you, let's say you are interested in buying a property, you're obviously going to be looking at the sale prices of the homes nearby in that neighborhood, the price per foot or per meter of all the homes in that neighborhood. And if one of them has a remarkably lower price per meter or price per square foot, that'll catch your attention. And you're correctly going to say to yourself, this one might be undervalued. I might want to buy this one. Every human who has half a brain has gone through that process. The difference is an algorithm can search every fucking house on the whole fucking platform in 5 minutes and mathematically bubble up all of the absolute best across a million different listings in 5 minutes. You as a human absolutely cannot compete with somebody who has the algorithms to do all of that fancy data analysis automagically. So, and it gets more interesting than that, because we only discussed one variable, which is price per square meter. There's probably 50 other variables that you as a human, unless you're a real expert, are not privy to, that they are. So they're going to find all of the best investment opportunities and buy them in bulk. And that's why these platforms are going to be wildly successful. The whole digitization and appetization of the real estate world is going to happen. Data
Tyler,
wins, y'all, until the Century 21 and, those old school clipboard, hush puppy wearing real estate agents start complaining to Washington, D.C., that's when there's likely to be any initial pushback. But until they start complaining to Uncle Joe and their senators on the Hill, this is going to go full steam ahead. Yeah.
Tyler, I believe that it's already happening. So as I mentioned earlier, I've bought and sold my last 2 homes without the assistance of a realtor. And when I sold my last house in 2019, completely remotely, so I was in Thailand, my house was in US. Most of the calls that I got within the first, 3-4 days of the listing were robocalls with Chinese accents and names like George, right? But it was really interesting because that was almost 2 full years ago, and that was on Zillow. So I can only imagine how much has advanced in these past 2 years in terms of, the level of AI, particularly being used within the real estate market. It's not a far-fetched conclusion that everything that you've just said will happen and has already begun.
One of the things that those tech companies can do is know exactly what the trends are in that area. So like if they know that, kitchens typically yield, a return of, 80% on investment, or if you do a bathroom, it's going to give you XYZ. Are now actually coming in and saying, hey, look, we'll finance the upgrades, if we can sell the house and, split the proceeds. And so like that's the other advantage. And then BlackRock and those other firms are really focused on the single family mid-range homes, and basically coming in paying cash for them, because their finance costs are so much lower than the typical homeowner. So they can afford to pay cash, and they still end up saving 30-40K versus the homeowner who had to go seek traditional financing. So it's becoming extremely disruptive out here in Southern California. The home values are just going parabolic again. So that's what's happening.
Okay, next one up is from TechCrunch, that quantum machines, whose hardware and software help users leverage quantum computing, it's a company called Quantum Machines, raises $50 million aimed at helping users leverage quantum computing. And there's a whole bunch of money going into quantum computing. And this is simultaneous to how AI is changing everything. And, that whole, those algorithms around, buying real estate, that's an example of an AI app. And there's thousands of such examples. It's hard to think of an industry that isn't going to be fucked over by AI in the way that we just described. These, how real estate can be using AI once there's data in play, and digitizing this buying and selling of properties. And the power of AI is to do that, giving somebody a real asymmetric advantage if they do have AIs and that kind of, once it's all digitized. So it's kind of a two-step process. The market becomes digitized. It used to be an analog, physical, brick and mortar market, and now it's a digitized market. Now that it's digitized and it's based on data, now whoever's got the better algorithms are going to dominate that market, because they just go in and they see what's going on, and it's like having X-ray vision, and that's part of the process. Now, that's AI, and it's not just in real estate. You can't think of an industry where AI isn't doing the same thing, in every possible nook and cranny of the of the economy. Simultaneous to that is quantum computers, and quantum computers is evolving separately, synchronistically, and quantum computers is likely to be every bit as disruptive as AIs as being in that example. And when it's a true potential multiplier, because quantum enables, thousands of years of calculations in minutes, and the combination of AIs with quantum machines it's going to make it's hard to even imagine. It's hard to come up with examples, except to say, what one classic example that's sort of given is you take a city like Los Angeles or Tokyo or any massive world metropolitan area with tens of millions of people, and all of their schedules for how they wake up and go to work. And if you had godlike powers to coordinate that complete mess of bodies moving from their homes to their offices, if you could have a godlike way to coordinate all of the street lights and all of the vehicles and all of the everything to absolutely optimize the travel of all of those people from their homes to their offices, it's far beyond any human ability to do that for 5 people, let alone 10 million. Well, a quantum computer can do that, and that's the type of computation power that we're talking about. And so it will potentially unlock all kinds of realities that we have hard time even anticipating. And then you have, for example, the fusion stuff that's going on, and we're seeing what seem to be credible, believable updates on fusion in recent weeks. And once quantum computers really come online, it's not out of the realm of possibility that quantum might actually bring that to fruition, similar to a new generation of battery development, where we could make the cost of batteries go down to next to nothing. And with we won't even need batteries if we figure out fusion. But the world could forever be changed, and there's so many huge potential breakthroughs on the horizon. So this quantum machines raising 50 million. The point is, there's a whole lot of money going into quantum computing behind the scenes in a way that's just generally not reported, because generally lay people aren't able to even grasp what it's about. If you think Bitcoin is hard to grasp, quantum computing is far more so. But suffice to say, it's the traditional kind of metaphor that's used is it's doing thousands of years of computations in minutes. That's just the really simple way to explain it. So the next one is a interesting one that plays into one of our ongoing narratives that we follow, which is JD.com out of China, which is one of China's biggest e-commerce sites. It's one of the biggest websites in the world. You can think Amazon of Asia, although you normally would think of Alibaba, but JD is, like it's just unbelievably big e-commerce out of China. And JD.com says their founder and CEO, Richard Liu, will step back from day-to-day operations to focus on other stuff and names his first president. And here we have yet another one of China's biggest CEO founders stepping back from running one of the world's biggest, most powerful, fastest growing companies to focus on finger painting. So it's we can now add JD, Pinduoduo, which is Tencent, Jack Ma from Alibaba, and I believe there's another one, and not to mention all of the ed tech founders who are all now doing finger painting because they're not allowed to have profitable businesses. They have to be nonprofits. But JD is a big one. Absolutely one of the biggest. So another one of China's biggest tech companies. And just to paint the picture for those who don't live in Asia, imagine Mark Zuckerberg saying, you know what? In fairness, we did have Jeff Bezos step down, but Jeff Bezos stepped down not due to any pressure from anybody. He stepped down because he has more money than, his thousands of his descendants will ever spend in their lifetimes. In this case, this seems to be related to pressure. And in fact, the article essentially indicates this. So it says from the Wall Street Journal, e-commerce company names its first president, facing tougher competition, Beijing's regulatory crackdown. So again, very different from Amazon, although Amazon is facing a little regulatory crackdown, but that's not why Jeff Bezos is resigning. Chinese e-commerce group JD named its first president Monday, paving the way for founder and chief executive Richard Liu to step back from day-to-day business to focus on longer-term strategy and mentoring young managers, and perhaps a little finger painting in between. The decision by Mr. Liu, who is also known as by the Chinese name Liu Quandong, to step back sets up possible succession plan and follows similar moves by other founders of Chinese tech giants facing tougher competition and widening crackdowns by Beijing. Peers including Pinduoduo, the TikTok owner ByteDance, so that's that's the one I was thinking of, went further than Mr. Liu and gave up leadership positions this year to focus on broader corporate strategy or pursue personal interests. Mr. Liu, 47 years old, founded the online retailer in 2004 as a platform selling electronics. JD has since grown into one of China's heavyweights, selling items including groceries and clothing to millions of monthly users. The company spun off its health subsidiary in an initial public offering in December and its logistics units in May in an IPO. It's just, all of this crackdown is causing all of the leaders to lay down and lay flat. Joining the Jack Ma Finger Painting Club, along with Pinduoduo and TikTok. There's not many left. These are the biggest companies in all of Asia. And aside from Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're the biggest tech companies in the world. So it's really quite remarkable that the big Chinese founders are all stepping down due to the crackdown. So the next big headline is a look at the mechanics behind DAOs, as they're pronounced in the crypto world, including Flamingo and Fingerprints, which collect blue chip NFTs to raise funds via NFT drops. And it's a unique world in and of itself. This whole concept of decentralized organizations. You can think of it as what NFTs are to the art market, DAOs are to the idea of creating a company and an organization without traditional corporate shares or S corps or C corps or LLCs. This is a new crypto-based entity called the DAO, decentralized organizations, where people contribute and cooperate and usually there's a coin that's part of the community, and you receive coins. And as an alternative to say, and normally you create a company, an S corp or a C corp or an LLC, and there's shares in the company. This is the crypto version of creating a company, a DAO, basically. And they have really interesting potential advantages that, and it is people are starting to wake up to how cool and interesting they are. The next one up is a Mexico-based company called Flat.mx, an online real estate marketplace for remodeled properties, raises $20 million. And here we go with the digitization of the real estate market in Mexico. Fantastic. And that's I think is particularly interesting because it opens it up to people all over the world. One of the downsides to the brick and mortar real estate markets was how difficult it was for people outside of one geography to participate unless they knew people locally. And now you could go on flat.mx and look at, everything that's going on there. It's quite cool. The next one is Financial Times says how Amazon roll-up businesses which acquire third-party sellers have raised $8 billion to date and make a profit by improving marketing and supply chain efficiencies. That's kind of obvious. And that's about it for the big, boring headlines on this Labor Day Monday. So then we now turn it to the more interesting headlines that everyone's tweeting in, like this one that Regent just sent in about our friends over at Klarna in Sweden, who pioneered the whole buy now, pay later phenomena that's exploding internationally. And it says, the headline reads, "No more infinity credits. Klarna CEO announces Nordic shakeup." Klarna, the buy now, pay later quadradecacorn, meaning it's worth about $50 billion, will shake up its business model in the Nordics by putting an end to revolving credits and unnecessary fees. But while the online shopping company continues to present itself as a fairer alternative to traditional banks and lenders, it is facing a backlash over customers' financial well-being. The news of Klarna's potential overhaul comes after buy now, pay later market exploded during COVID-19. It is expected to be worth $166 billion by 2023, according to Global Data's thematic research. However, the skyrocketing popularity of installment apps like Klarna, Lay-Buy, and Affirm has grown in tandem with regulators like the Financial Conduct Authority and the Swedish authorities taking an interest in the sector. As a result, lawmakers around the world are increasingly investigating the risks of buy now, pay later providers, putting profits ahead of customers' financial well-being. In response to these critical examinations, Klarna has been busy presenting itself as a leader in consumer protection. Over the past few months, the Stockholm-headquartered fintech has launched a price comparison site and repeated the claim that it is less dangerous for users' financial health than traditional credit card companies. It is against this background that Klarna has now announced plans to shake up its business model in the Nordics. The CEO, Sebastian, founder and CEO, first flagged for the inbound reform in an interview in Svenska Dagbladet, which is one of Sweden's popular newspapers. So the source is basically out of the Swedish newspaper. Klarna then followed up with an official statement on Monday outlining the new changes in English, where it says, "Today we're so big that we have both an opportunity and the responsibility to make a positive difference," says Klarna CEO Sebastian. "We can do that by improving the general understanding and expose the downsides of the credit market. But the biggest impact we can have is by acting ourselves. Among other things, we're now going to remove all unnecessary fees, give customers more tools to pay in time, and remove revolving credits. The first massive change is, as the CEO noted, to get rid of revolving credits." Sebastian refers to them in Swedish, which directly translates to infinity credits, but no matter what you call them, they basically refer to the same thing: a line of credit that has no end date or a fixed number of payments. One of the most common types of revolving credits are the types provided by credit card companies. Klarna's self-regulating, as it would seem, and removing kind of the things that people could potentially accuse it of any kind of bad behaviors, and they're proactively defanging and diffusing any critics by doing this. So I'm going to tweet that one out to the Tech News Twitter account, and thank you to Regent for that one. Anyone else have a hot tweet that they've seen since we met last, or in the past day or two or three?
Hey,
Yeah.
Tyler, Ken, I don't have a hot tweet, but I wanted to comment on one of the ones that you
Okay.
just did because it's a kind of new story and that's an area I have some expertise in. This thing with the banks complaining about the cryptos, this is actually a really serious issue if you just automatically destabilize the banking system without any kind of government policy behind it. Because because the government, the bank accounts are, FDIC insured. It has reminiscence of when this SNL situation got destabilized, when investment banks got into commercial banking and Glass-Steagall fell apart. It has profound implications for society that are not necessarily good if it's done willy nilly. You know, I'm just telling you, it's. I know you've put a positive spin on this, but if it could be really, really bad. So yeah, the banks have a kind of a vested interest, which may not be the public interest always, but there is a public interest because most of the public's money that's in bank accounts is FDIC insured, and if you destabilize that, without any thought, because it just happens. It's a problem. And by the way, some of the stuff that the cryptos are doing with these like where they're talking about these high interest rate accounts with stable coins, it's nonsense because nobody regulates whether the stable coin issuers actually have dollars backing them. Okay, and most things that have been most pegs, most even currency pegs, actually historically have failed, even when they're a fiat currency peg. So, because I was in a room and I kind of described what happened in Mexico in 1994, and the Mexican government tried to peg to the dollar, and eventually they couldn't keep up buying dollars, and they were legitimately trying to have enough dollars, behind them. So, this is not all as good as you're, I think, alluding to, but we'll find out when some of these stablecoin things ultimately will blow up. Okay, but that's my own view
Okay.
of it.
Thanks for that. Yes,
Tyler,
Messi.
I don't know if you discussed it, but yesterday on the Sunday talks, the New York researcher studying the Facebook misinformation talked about individuals working on that research getting deplatformed. And then they came up with, they discovered much more data on the spread of misinformation on Facebook. Even though the site said many things and they are doing their best, the study found that from August 2020 to January 2021, misinformation got 6 times more clicks on Facebook than posts containing facts and truth. And also, they say misinformation accounted for the vast majority of engagement from far right posts, like 68% more compared to 36% coming from far left. So the woman was on the Sunday Talks, Laura Edelson. She said that she got banned from Facebook, but then she said that they got a lot more information, even though they got, banned from them. That's the new thing I saw.
Yep. Yeah, we covered those headlines last week. So, other interesting ones. Sana, who's just joining us on stage, sent in an interesting one. AMD, the big chip company, filed a teleportation patent, but not for humans, is the headline. And let me open this interesting article up for you. It says a team of researchers at AMD, Advanced Micro Devices, filed a patent for teleportation. Though Star Trek fans shouldn't don their plastic Spock ears in celebration just yet. What a great kudo! Who's this? Chris Young. I like your style, Chris. That was a very clever line there. A patent doesn't refer to human teleportation. Instead, it is focused on teleportation of qubits, the quantum computing equivalent of a bit in classical computing. And the new patent, titled "Look Ahead Teleportation for Reliable Computation in Multi-SIMD Quantum Processor," was born from the company's research into quantum teleportation process. By focusing on this quantum phenomena, It aims to improve the efficiency of quantum computing, partly by reducing the number of qubits required for any given calculation. Though Google may have announced that it achieved quantum supremacy in 2019 and China claimed to have the world's most powerful quantum computer, there's still a long journey to go before quantum computing becomes a mainstream. I was just going to mute you here, Jeff. Sounds like your mic went open. Oh, somebody else has their mic open. Dr. Francine. Okay. Oh, no, Monica or Vinay. Muting everybody. Okay. So, the patent titled "Look Ahead Teleportation for Reliable Coming." Oh, we covered that. Though Google may have announced that in China, there's still a long journey to go before quantum computing becomes a mainstream scalable method of computing. One of the greatest obstacles to quantum computing is the fact that quantum states are incredibly unstable. Scalability is especially tricky at this as this instability only increases with more qubits are added to the system. And then the quantum teleportation bit, which this patent relates to, says that the patent contains several figures and diagrams detailing a quantum architecture that utilizes quantum process regions where individual qubits lay idle, waiting in line to process data. The next approach aims to improve the stability of quantum computing by using qubit teleportation to reduce the number of qubits required for complex calculations. By teleporting qubits across processing regions, the method enables workloads to be processed in an out-of-order execution method, meaning that the idle qubits would be able to execute independently of previous step being fully processed. Essentially, this would reduce the dependence on having qubits processed in sequential order, allowing independent and simultaneous processing. Though we might not be able to teleport from one point to another in 60s sci-fi fashion, AMD's new patent promises a new quantum computing architecture that is more stable and efficient, potentially bringing us one step closer to seeing the quantum computer revolution truly soar. Yeah.
So Tyler, this, how you were describing, what kind of processing it would take to figure out where everyone in SoCal is going and basically optimize it. To look at quantum, this is essentially what they're doing, right? Is that they're figuring out where that qubit needs to go, and instead of it queuing, just sending it where it needs to go in real time. And the best way to look at quantum versus binary computers is binary computers think primarily in 2 dimensions, and quantum is like moving into 3 dimensions, because standard computers work zeros and ones. Quantum would work in 0, 1, and in 3 dimensions instead of 2, and that's why it's so much more powerful.
Tyler, can you check the hand raise,
Okay.
please? I think
Thank you. Yeah.
Evan is in. Yeah.
Oh,
I think Donna is here too. I
okay.
saw her. Yeah. And Faraz is here
Okay.
too.
Just give me 10 seconds here. Anyone else with one? I have 50 more to get through. But while I look in the audience for tardy students, here's Donna. Who else do we got here? I didn't see Faraz. Where's Faraz? Hello.
Hey there.
Yeah, Faraz is there. Evan is there
I
too.
think I saw Evan.
Faraz, raise
I
your
got
hand.
him. I found
He's
him.
here.
It's like a Where's Waldo in the audience here.
Oh, Nicholas just came in. Nicholas
Oh,
Leon.
good. Hey, Nicholas. Is he on stage automatically? I can never figure out why some people are able to get on stage and others aren't. But
raise your hand, Nicholas. He's here.
Yeah, he knows how it works. He'll raise his hand if he wants to.
Sometimes he go hiding.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's easier if they just get out and jump back in.
Yes. Yeah, it's not foolproof. There's always some bugs and stuff. Okay.
Hi, Ellen.
Okay. So, other interesting headlines here. Edward Savage sends in this one that Germany reportedly pushing the EU to require Google to provide 7 years of updates for their Android phones. Because in addition to Apple's new phone next week, the new version of their iPhone 13, it'll be called, Google's also planning to announce their Pixel 6, which is expected to be their biggest upgrade yet because it has their own chip, their own system on a chip, which is Tensor, which is specifically designed to work with their AI, which is their real focus with their phone, and it's supposed to make their smartphone even much smarter than even the iPhone. And I kind of like where they're going with this, which is they're competing, not on, well, believe it or not, the AI can actually really help the camera. A lot of the improved image processing of the camera is actually done through the AI, and Google's able to use their advanced kind of AI chops to make a much smarter smartphone, especially when talking to Google Assistant versus Siri. And already, this is one of the benefits of using a Google Pixel phone over an iPhone is Google Assistant is better than Siri pretty much in every way you can test it. And that difference is about to get really noticeably bigger with the new Pixel 6 that's coming out, because it'll have its own system on a chip architecture specifically designed in a new chip called Tensor, specifically to enable better AI on the new Pixel 6. So, no doubt they are going to showcase that in their event, which is likely to be in the next week or two, perhaps at the latest. So, but back to the headline, Germany reported one notable thing. It's now being reported that the Android 12 and the Pixel 6 will only provide 3 years of updates, meaning you buy the handset, you buy the phone, and the new software downloads, the operating system updates will only be good for 3 years. And then after that, you're stuck with whatever operating system you have. And Germany's reportedly pushing the EU to require 7 years of updates for Android. According to a new report, Germany's government is pushing the EU to require 7 years of updates for Android and iOS-powered smartphones. And if Michael's still with us, I would love to. Is Michael still with us?
No, he
That's
had
jerky.
to.
So
Yeah.
I was hoping to hear his take on, why that isn't a good thing. Like, it's Apple's phone. They designed it. They can do whatever the hell they want. If you buy it,
I tried to pin him again. Let's see
that's
whether
all
he'll
right.
jump back in.
It's because there's certain laws about electronics and other items where you have, it's called obsolescence, and part of your supply chain needs to guarantee parts for a certain period. So I think the Germans are saying, look, if obsolescence laws are here, shouldn't the same apply for software? Because if you have a 7-year-old Android phone and it's not patched, you're literally walking around with just a big virus in your hands. And that's the challenge, right? I mean, I don't know who still has an iPhone 4, but I know they still work. They're still getting periodic updates.
So on this, I also imagine it might have something to do with the fact that the Germans are on that planned obsolescence, are also mindful of the car industry that is always in the front of their minds, and they have similar obsolescent kind of points with that, where car manufacturers have to continue to service cars and continue to make parts for cars for up to 7 years. And I imagine that's why the Germans are saying, hey, what about these smartphone companies? They're kind of like little cars without wheels. But so the
to regulate the upgrade cycle.
Yes.
And then the EU they passed it in May of 2021. I'll share it on the tweet. It says EU law requires companies to fix electronic goods for up to 10 years. So I believe that also would cover software.
And then Vinay, you just sent in a DM about the GeoPhone launch coming September 10th, which will basically be 4 days before the Apple phone launch. Not surprisingly that those are in close proximity. But tell everybody what the GeoPhone is all about and why Indians are so excited about it.
Well, it's going to be.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah,
Very
sorry.
well.
I was trying to get off. It's going to be
Can
the
I hear
world's
you
cheapest
now?
smartphone.
Now we don't hear you.
Anywhere from the lowest range of
Vinay, we lost
$40
you.
up to $90. It is going to create so much digital inclusion And a couple of months ago, we talked about the e-Rupee that was launched from a voucher. It's going to make it's 4G. It's going to make accessibility and affordability of smartphones. It's going to be huge. It's 10 million phones is the first round of manufacture, and they're expecting it to get sold out in the next 2 months.
Your mic got very soft.
It's going to be absolute. I mean, imagine it's running on Android 11.
Yep.
It's going to have 32 GB
Yes.
RAM at $75.
Oh wow, that's why they're excited.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's a tenth of the price of a normal smartphone. This is happening with Xiaomi phones out of China as well, where these phones that are essentially like the iPhones of 1 or 2 years ago are now at the $50 to $75 price point. And this is kind of the new reality because it enables a whole lot more people to get a smartphone with a big screen and a big camera. And now you're adding more internet users. And this is particularly well suited to the Indian market and the Indonesia and, the Southeast Asian market added, I believe it was 70 million new internet users in the past year. And we will probably, with a phone like that, you could conceivably in India alone add another 200 million more smartphone users in the next year or two with a phone like that.
Yeah, I mean, India added 120 million internet users over the course of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Monica, you have some kind of sense of this?
Tyler, there is one very interesting thing. So Jio had launched the 1500 rupees, which is about the $20 phone, a couple of years back. So every single person who started accessing the internet during the 5-year revolution. In fact, today is the 5 years of when Jio had launched their telco in India, and it happened to be number one for a couple of years. I think for a couple of years until Airtel just succeeded them in the leadership spot. But the more interesting thing is, however, that with the Google partnership and the investment in Geo, this actually means that the Android dominance in the country will remain. I think that's the most critical thing. And second, which is most important, which people are not talking about, is that Geo Fiber, which is the internet backbone of India, is getting rolled out. So the thinking of Mr. Mukesh Ambani was that he would basically offer you the phone which you can take everywhere. He would offer you internet via fiber in villages as well, so that you had broadband access for children. And then there are education and other services on top, along with the payments bank. So basically, the entire infrastructure and of the ecosystem that people need would be available via Reliance. And another interesting thing that happened today is that Mr. Mukesh Ambani has just hit one of the richest Asian tags, and he's 8 short of 100 billion. And Reliance shares have hit another new high and made Mr. Ambani even richer. So these two things about Reliance have been hitting the headlines.
And
So
he's
interesting.
also the one who's planning to compete with SpaceX Starlink, if I remember correctly.
No. Actually, that's Airtel. That's OneWeb. That's a different one.
Is it?
He's launching something in green energy, which is actually making him really, really hot right now.
And
Tyler, in the 70 million figure that you threw out, it wasn't internet users, it was online consumers. So I'm sure the user base has grown exponentially more during the pandemic.
But this new smartphone that's launching next week in India will no doubt, perhaps to that point, it's a subtle but important distinction, which is the difference between internet people who now have internet access and people who are actually engaging in the economy of online shoppers, and not just shoppers but sellers, more importantly, because we read a headline 8 hours ago that Amazon today, the big headline was Amazon now to have a real within India are very focused, based on the government's suggestion and I dare say insistence, that that Amazon work with farmers in helping them buy and sell, in India, digitizing essentially the farming ecosystem of India, that's just tremendous. That is truly huge in a way that's hard for people to get their head around unless you happen to be from, again, Asia, where Pinduoduo themselves is incredibly focused on precisely that in China. And it's a tens of billions, if not $100 billion opportunity digitizing farming in this part of the world. So I think it's smart. But to that point is those farmers are going to want a phone much like this one that's launching next week with a nice camera, with a nice screen, not your typical cheesy $20 phone. Again, it's a $50 phone, but my goodness, are you able to get a lot out of a $50 or $70 phone these days? So I'm optimistic that this will be a real win for Indians in the second, third, fourth tier cities to have a really smart phone with a nice camera and a nice screen and get them as digitized so they can participate in the online economy. Yeah, Ranjan?
Yep. And we should also connect that to the fact that Facebook invested in Geo, which means all the Facebook apps may be pre-installed in all these phones.
Sure.
So more phones, more Facebook inclusivity.
Well, I wonder if they'll.
Yeah, so it's going to get interesting because both Facebook and it's a Google partnership. Facebook is invested in Geo, so it's going to be a real e-commerce, social commerce addition to these
I
companies.
imagine that's why the price is so remarkable, is because of the subsidies where Facebook even subsidizes the cost of the phone so that people become, those are the people who are going to get this phone it'll have Facebook bundled in a very kind of in a way that will almost ensure that those new people who get those phones probably weren't really that involved on the internet previously, and now they're going to become all those 100 million 200 million new phones that come out will be 200 million new Facebook users, and they know that over the course of a year or two or three they're going to make 10, 20, 30, $40 off of each of them, and they can go ahead and subsidize the price of the phones.
And
Yeah,
they'll have their Novi wallet.
Have a cheap phone with a side order of crack and surveillance.
No.
yeah.
And Nicholas, they'll have their Novi wallet that's
Oh,
downloaded.
That's right. That's right. And that will come with KYC AML, and that comes with taxation, and that comes with the end of democracy or any pretense of it.
Wow, Donna, you might be right. That could be their Trojan horse for Novi going big into India. That would be tremendous.
So the other interesting thing is 2 days ago, Starlink got its regulatory approvals to launch its services in India officially. So they're not going to be under the radar. So if you think about it, the cheap phone, internet access through Reliance Jio, Starlink, OneWeb, imagine how many more people will get added to the digital economy in India. We're already at 350 million internet users. Easily, we can double that.
That's true.
At the current value of a user, obviously not in India currently, but in America, it's worth them spending $240 just to acquire a client if they're going to provide them with credit at 13%. So they can spend up to $240 before it's even relevant in cost terms.
Oh, and it's buy now, pay later. Monica knows this number of BNPL companies. So
exactly.
So they can spend 3 times that amount.
Yeah, no, that's if they're doing finance. If they're doing credit at 13%, you can spend $240, and that's why they can afford to subsidize the handsets. And like Donna said, that's why they're going to install the Novi wallet, and that's why look what happened in India with Twitter. And this is the technocracy is staking their claim, and they're going into partnership with the government, and the government is going to make sure that they have oversight, just like they did during the COVID distribution of benefits for those people that joined up. So it's part of the surveillance state uniting with the surveillance capitalists, uniting with the surveillance venture capitalists who understand this game very well. And it's the next
Nicholas,
chapter.
did you by chance catch any bit of the Balaji Sam Harris podcast episode that dropped a few days ago?
I heard snippets of it, but I didn't have the 4 hours to listen. But I'm very well aware of both
Yeah.
Balaji's views and
Yeah.
Sam's.
So, a whole bunch of fantastic headlines here that are relevant in roundabout ways. One is that Europeans, this is according to Bitcoin.com, European citizens reject EU imposed crypto regulation. Most European citizens reject a crypto regulation regime imposed by the European Union on its member states, according to a recent survey, to which the EU says, "Who asked you?" Most of the European citizens reject. It says most surveyed citizens lean towards independent cryptocurrency regulation in each country, compared to 25% that have approve of an EU-imposed regulation. However, most of the citizens polled acknowledge they still don't know much about cryptocurrencies in the first place. Fair enough. Well, at least points for honesty on both the participants and the journalist in this one. The poll was carried out by a global consulting firm of 31,000 citizens in 12 EU states, including Germany, Estonia, France, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, and Spain. And the survey found that most Europeans support locally issued laws instead of a set of rules imposed by the EU. Citizens of Greece, 51%, said they would prefer their own government to regulate cryptocurrencies rather than the EU. And then second was Italy with 47, Estonia with 46, Netherlands 41, Germany 40, Latvia 39, France 37. Also, a surprising high number of citizens would prefer the issuance of local cryptocurrencies instead of a digital euro, something that shows more and more Europeans blame economic inefficiencies on the EU integration. And a large part of the population remains convinced that the crisis was caused by poor decisions made at the EU level and not by serious deficiencies in the national banking sector. However, the affiliation of each country within the EU impedes this from being a reality. So the Eurozone countries that want to make use of digital currency would be linked to potential digital euro led by the European Central Bank in coordination with the Eurozone banking system. I don't think these folks have any say in the matters, really. So I think the EU is going to do.
I was going to say they're like going to try and regulate oxygen, something.
So the next one was actually a similar but different one. A majority of Russians say they would rather buy crypto over traditional assets. And the article says that crypto has grown to be the investment of choice for a lot of people across the globe. This time, a poll carried out by the Association of Forex Dealers has found that the majority of Russians currently favor digital assets over traditional ones. So what? The survey showed that options like fiat currencies or gold had fallen out of favor with the wider investment population. Even potential investors, people who have never traded crypto before, said they were already thinking of buying into crypto. The poll was carried out in the month of August, between August 4 and 24th, with a total of 502 respondents, which means somebody did this on a weekend by themselves. Of this group, 90% of the respondents were males. So that means the people doing the polling were also probably male. In the age range of 25 to 44-year-old, the sentiment of the respondents towards the cryptocurrencies was greatly skewed towards the positive, since most of the respondents said they believed that crypto would continue to grow, and at some point said 8% of the respondents would replace cash completely. Russia boasts a population of 144 million, and the number of investors. So, of the yeah.
But by the way, gold is trading near a 20-year high at this point, so I don't know about that.
Of the respondents, 77% said they would rather buy cryptocurrencies than traditional assets like fiat currency or gold. Okay, but it's an incredible.
Makes sense.
Much easier to move your crypto than your gold.
Yeah, and it's much, and they know that the government's run by Putin, and so they know that censorship resistance is something of value to them.
It's also quite a tech savvy population.
Yeah, they're technically capable.
Technically capable is a good way to say it. Where the geeks have an interesting kind of pocket of reserve power that a lot of other countries aren't able to flex. So the next one is from Channel News Asia. that the makers of the Vespa scooters, the Piaggio company, and KTM, which I believe KTM is out of the Netherlands. Where's KTM out of? I believe it is.
I think KTM is a bike company, a
It is, but
motorcycle company, right?
where is it out of? I think that's.
I think they're out of the United States. They're the ones that do the big single cylinder motors, I
I think
think.
they're out of Europe somewhere. But anyway, Honda and Yamaha and Piaggio and KTM, all of whom make an incredible amount of scooters, combustion engine scooters. Honda is the biggest in the world. Yamaha's
Austrian. KTM is
Austrian. Thank you. Thank
Austrian.
Australian or Austrian?
Austria.
Austria.
Same as Shirovsky.
Okay, Austrian. Thank you. So Honda and Yamaha are easily two of the biggest motorbike makers on the planet. And in Thailand, that's 100% of the market is Honda and Yamaha, actually. So, and I would say that's true of all over Southeast Asia. So Honda and Yamaha and Piaggio and KTM are all creating a consortium to have interswapperable batteries for their future electric vehicles, their electric scooters. And this electric scooter thing, while lagging behind the EV cars, has really just exploded in the last couple weeks with bikes out of India and now out of Japan and Asia is catching up very, very quickly in a really fantastic way. And I'm in the
This is a kind of a big deal.
Totally.
I mean, because this is, you're going to just pull up and change a battery out.
Yeah,
and if all the bikes run the same battery,
there's
really
a startup
easy.
that was aiming to do exactly this, and it was doing this, and the whole premise was these battery banks, and the battery it's heavy to carry with one hand, but you can carry it with one hand, and you can pull it out of your bike and push it into a kind of receptacle and replace it with a charged one and slap it into your bike, and it's way faster than even putting gas in the bike, and no attendant needed, and you could have these little battery charging service stations all over the cities, so that they would be,
especially in like Thailand and stuff, right? You could have one conceivably every couple miles, where everyone on a bike knows I can just go there, pick up a battery, and go on with my life.
So if all of the bikes cooperate in this way, and if Honda and Yamaha are doing it, you'd be an idiot not to participate in doing whatever format they are using. And yeah, that could really become a major unlock in the adoption of these vehicles. You don't have to worry about charging them yourself with a cable anywhere. You just just like going to this. It really kind of has a nice.
It's a big deal. This is a huge deal because with Teslas, they had kind of kicked this around earlier that you'd go to a Tesla place and they would drop your entire powertrain out and replace it.
Yeah, Tesla talked about the hot swapping of batteries. Yeah,
there's issues there, right? Because some people are going to ruin the powertrain before, But if you just change the battery, then your hardware is yours, but the battery is what get changed out.
Yeah, keeping it on the automotive tip for a second, Damelaire sent in one from The Guardian that the weakest UK August car sales in 13 years amid supply chain shortages. Chip crisis hampers production of new vehicles at firms worldwide, including VW and Toyota and everybody. And so now the weakest car sales in 13 years, well, it's because all the cars are gone. Like there's empty car showrooms now. Like it's getting very difficult to both new and used cars. And it's driving up the price of used cars because there's more demand than supply, largely due to COVID. People don't want to ride on public transportation, understandably. And with this massive chip shortage, these massive car companies are just halting their production. So that's also why the dealerships are empty, because there's no new cars to deliver to the dealerships. So thank you for that one, Damelaire. Just tweeting that one out to the Tech News Twitter account. and somewhat of a vehicle, kind of like a little tiny car, is roaming around the streets of Singapore. And robots to patrol central Singapore for the next 3 weeks to detect undesirable social behaviors. And I just tweeted it out so you could get a look at this thing. And it's a 4-wheeled little micro car about the size of a person. And it's they're calling it a robot. It has a 360-degree camera, and it's rolling around Singapore looking for people not wearing masks or smoking or chewing gum or whatever Singaporeans aren't allowed to do. So the only missing ingredient, of course, is the facial recognition algorithms that can then charge your bank account directly. And which country will be the first to do that? It might be Singapore. It might be China. Yeah, coming to a country near you soon.
How benevolent is your dictatorship?
and how tech savvy is it?
How long before this would get shot in America?
Well, by the way,
I can
we
imagine.
had a little glimpse of this in New York City with the Boston Dynamics robotic dogs, where there was such an uproar that the dogs were sent home prematurely. So, yeah, with 360 cameras, I wonder if they'll be vandalized. And in America.
Oh yeah, people are going to put
They will have taken a picture of you before you got close enough to vandalize it, and you will have your account docked for the cost of one Boston Dynamics dog.
Okay, just a reminder, American, when you are in Singapore, don't vandalize it, because if not, you will get
you'll never go home again.
No, you get the, what you call that? The whip.
The bamboo caning.
Caning,
Yes,
caning.
caning.
It's a fine city. Come on, don't say that about Singapore. It's a fine city.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, you know what? Singapore is a very good country for people who
I don't know. I
who
wonder
behave
how
themselves. For
Hey,
lawbreakers,
Cheryl, have Americans?
better to stay
It's
away.
been a while since an American was whipped in Singapore.
Yeah. The Michael Fay long time ago.
I think
right? Because he
he was
vandalized the
offended,
train. Yeah,
and it.
I think he grew up better man. If you go and interview him now, he say, "Oh yeah, he deserved it."
I wonder if that counts as a microaggression, getting whipped by a government. So the next one is from The Guardian, from Damalaire. The headline reads, European banks storing 20 billion a year in tax havens. Barclays and HSBC among banks booking money equivalent to 14% of annual profits in offshore entities. Sneaky as they are. And the next one's from also.
That's just preparation for them bringing all that money, or taking all that money away from those tax havens when it all goes digital, because you won't be able to escape their clutches. I'm sure the Caymans and Barbados and those guys are feeling very nervous. Not Barbados, Cayman and BVI.
The next one is also from Damalaire. Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission sets up a fintech division for crypto research. Nigeria's securities regulator, the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission, has set up a fintech division to study cryptocurrencies. And then we got this one from Kinsha, that Elon Musk's new satellites could sneak internet past the Taliban, is the headline from Quartz. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we debated this, did we not? As did every geek on this issue of, will Starlink work in areas where the government doesn't want it to work, and yada, yada, yada. Well, boy, is this Afghanistan going to be an interesting example. So this article from Quartz says, today, SpaceX and other satellite internet providers can't easily sneak internet access into repressive countries with their permission. The technical and legal challenges are too difficult, but a new generation of laser-equipped spacecraft being developed by Elon Musk's space company may solve some of those problems, allowing the internet to slip past iron curtains. Oh boy, here we go. SpaceX's Starlink network is an unprecedented approach to delivering internet from space, with 1,740 satellites launched about 500 miles above the planet. It is the biggest constellation out there currently in beta testing. It provides broadband connectivity to users below. Starlink is now available in 14 countries, but what if someone wanted to use Starlink in a country without permission from the government? One key challenge to eluding censorship is technical. Starlink users need to be within several hundred miles of a ground station that is plugged into the internet, so the satellites can relay data back up and forth between them. SpaceX is not going to be able to set up these stations in authoritarian countries, or likely many of their neighbors. Enter the lasers. SpaceX is rolling out new satellites that may alleviate this technical challenge. Uh-oh. The company halted Starlink launches in May to wait for new spacecraft that were equipped with optical laser communications, which have higher throughput than radio transmissions. If it works, the satellites will be able to link directly to each other more efficiently. That in turn means that instead of the need of a ground station a few hundred miles away, a user could have their data sent back and forth through the Starlink network to a ground station anywhere. Lasers links alleviate ground station constraints. So data can go from, say, Sydney to London through space, which is 40% faster speed of light than fiber and shorter path, Musk tweeted. If the system is up in 4 to 6 months, as Musk promises, and you should probably add some significant margin to that, dissidents could potentially be able to log into the global communications network to share their stories, report on human rights violations, organize resistance, and undermine official narratives. There are still some very practical obstacles. A Starlink terminal costs $500 and internet access is $99 a month. So any users will need a decent amount of cash in US dollars that they can transfer to SpaceX. And it's not clear if the company is plugged into the Hawala system or foreign backers to cover the cost. And Starlink's pizza box size motorized satellite dish won't be easy to hide. So don't expect them springing up on the buildings in downtown Kabul. So we're going to tweet that one out.
Just shows both of those stories just show how the geopolitics, because you mentioned Nigeria beforehand and their investigations into crypto, which is really a political thing because of the corruption in their central bank and the way that they affect the or the exchanges for their citizens and their freedom. And you look at that in conjunction with what they're saying that they're doing with the Chinese, and they're importing the Great Firewall of China. And so then you look at, and then you mention Elon and what he could potentially do with Starlink to enable freedom, etc. Except you've got economic interests which are commingled because Elon has a giant exposure through Tesla to China and also now to Germany with the gigafactories, whereby I'm sure that it will be very difficult for him not to be in compliance with the EU laws and China. And so the question is, will he stand up for freedom, or will he comply, like the other members of the technocracy, in the interests of economics, with the rules of those particular countries?
So it says that in the second to last paragraph of this article that SpaceX is unlikely to skirt regulatory rules in China, while Musk's company Tesla builds and sells electric cars there, nor is it likely that SpaceX would try to skirt the borders of authoritarian countries where he's doing business with his cars. But maybe that's a clever way to get them to keep buying their cars, so that they can insist that he not implement free internet there.
Is Jack working on a satellite spaceborne communication system as well, or?
Yeah, it's called the China Defense System.
Which Jack? Jack Ma or
sorry,
Jack?
Twitter.
Jack Dorsey.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you were talking about Jack Ma. And what if you could make the terminal device much smaller, like put it in an iPhone? Hint, hint. So you wouldn't need this big satellite dish. You completely bypass the local infrastructure and keep it in your pocket like a hotspot.
You
I
mean
was
like a
thinking
That
Helium Network does that as well. Like, because it's more so Elon versus Helium Network right now, and I feel like Helium's gonna do very well in this. I don't know about anyone else is
Oh yeah,
watching
I've been
that though.
watching it. It's truly fantastic. It's a
Yeah.
global network, and the whole idea of helium in China is kind of mind blowing.
So on the iPhone thing, they'll just make sure that the iPhones that are sold in China don't have that feature, that hardware that'll connect to the satellite directly.
Well,
That's what connects back to the other story, though, of course, is that if you have a cheap enough handset, you can run a cryptographic proof, both either of work or of stake, through the phone that could pay for the data subscription that could be maintained through a ground-based mesh network, which in Tesla's case is the cars because they've got giant GPU processors on board, right? Or through a handset that could then create an uplink via a terminal, which could be, in a large space that you couldn't necessarily find it, and then you could connect the two. But the economics, like they note in the article, will prevent corporations from doing this. So it's only really distributed, decentralized DAOs or organizations or just people power that could really achieve that. It couldn't be done by a corporation.
Okay. So the next big one is from Evan from Yahoo News. Do we need humans for that job? Automation booms after COVID. Ask your roast beef sandwich at an Arby's drive-through. Oh, ask for a roast beef sandwich.
That would be good. Ask your
Yeah.
roast beef sandwich. That
Hey,
would be
roast beef.
interesting. How do you feel about being eaten
Hey,
by me?
Arby's. Are you actually beef? Ask for a roast beef sandwich at an Arby's drive-through east of Los Angeles, and you might be talking to Tori, an artificial intelligent voice assistant. And this is.
I've been thinking about this recently about like just anonymity and like just off the back of I forget who spoke last on the decentralized topic, but it seems that people trust more in someone who's super anonymous and it's seeming like they want to do well rather than an organization who you can actually place blame on. And even when we speak about let's say Uber's customer service or Apple's customer service, you're not necessarily speaking to a real human. It's more so of a robot more so than anything else. So I wonder why that is, honestly.
I actually think that's an interesting observation because I think that most people have become autonomic because they have no free will in making decisions within a corporation. So when you speak to a human, they have no agency anyway because they're so programmed that this is one of the observations. And you see people like Elon who are meme kings, and then you have smaller meme lords like Charles Hoskinson leading Ada, where people are outsourcing their ability to make decisions and discern because they'll follow the meme lord or the meme king. So, humans are somewhat programmatic at this point as well.
You bring up a great point, Nicholas, which
That's
is
great.
in the process of digitizing any particular industry, say, for example, the real estate industry, which was traditionally brick and mortar, and you had human real estate agents and human buyers and sellers, and it was a very human, you get in a car, you drive to a property physically, and there's handshakes and ink signatures on papers, and the whole thing is notably kind of lagged in the digitization process.
Full of
Right.
friction.
But now
full of
that we're
friction.
now that that's starting to be digitized, and you've got Xylo and Open Door adding all of these listings, and people are buying them digitally without ever going there, without any agent present, and this whole thing is digitizing. When an industry is mid-cycle through the digitization process, it forces the humans that are interacting in this transitory digitization process to defer to the machines, and these rules get put in place that make it convenient for the data and the systems and the architecture of the tech to operate efficiently, which minimizes the autonomy and authority of the humans in that ecosystem. So you end up with a whole lot of computer says no, computer says yes type responses from the humans.
That's a great
Tyler,
example. That's a great
that's
example. Just to respond to that
that's
quickly.
As a question, would you say that humans trust AI without actually knowing that they trust AI right now?
so Tyler, I was
I,
going to say that, your statement I think is particularly poignant given that in the US at least, it's Labor Day, right? So this is the day that here in the United States
I love
we
where you're going.
recognize yeah, I mean, but really I think that it really begs to question, where does the human element where does it go from here? And how do we ensure that people are still core to the process as we accelerate the development of technology? Most of the world recognizes Labor Day, I believe, on May 1st, but in the US, this is
Right.
that day, right? So I think that if we had time, we could have a really robust discussion around this
Yes,
topic.
the humans needed a
I
day
think
off at the end of summer, and they held a rally and walked, did a protest. But it's quite ironic, isn't it, to have to bring up this point on this day, and read this article on this day most of all. And I'll turn it over to you, Nicholas. Here it says, ask for a roast beef sandwich at an Arby's drive-thru in LA, and you might be talking to Tori, an AI voice assistant that will take your order and send it to the line cooks. It doesn't call sick, says Amir, whose family installed the AI voice at Arby's franchise near this year in Ontario, California. It doesn't get corona, and the reliability of it is great. The pandemic didn't just threaten America's health when it slammed the U.S. in 2020. It may also have posed a long-term threat to many other jobs. Faced with worker shortages and high labor costs, companies are starting to automate service sector jobs that economists once considered safe, assuming that machines couldn't easily provide the human contact that they believed customers would demand. Past experience suggests that such automation waves eventually create more jobs than they destroy, but that they also disproportionately wipe out less skilled jobs that many low-income workers depend on, resulting growing pains in the U.S. economy could be severe. Basically, so, and we talked about this a little bit when we met
so.
10 hours ago, which is the jobs that will be replaced, or as tech unfolds in different industries, it can disproportionately affect the lesser educated, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think there's so many ways that what you just said with regard to Arby's, and also to do with I think the better example is the estate agent business that you noted. And I think that there's good reasons why this is happening. And I think the first reason is that the asset inflation of house prices means that the fees, especially in America, charged, which are on average 5 or 6% in America, are giant expensive. If an average, well, not an average, but if in LA and New York, people are spending $1 million, 5 or 6%, $50,000 or $60,000 is a giant amount. The same 5 or 6% is also a giant amount of the deposit, which is usually 20%, and you can borrow the 80%. So if you think about 5% of what is normally the equity piece, it's 20%. So if you could save that 5%, you get a much higher velocity of money in the economy. So that is good. The bad side of it, and the reality is that there is a monopoly that exists in the real estate business, which is the MLS, and it's sort of a mini cartel, but it shows how industries are protected. So the agents are protected, but the real value that is provided in the process of agency was originally advertising, but now it happens, as you say, on Zillow. And so the volume of responses can come through the internet. It's now the execution of the trade, and the execution of the trade in California, for example, happens online anyway, and you need an escrow agent, and you need these various other legal pieces like a title insurance. That is also very expensive. All of that is going to be sucked out of the real estate business over the course of the next year or two, I would say. And there are people working on it, including centralized powers like Zillow, backed by VCs, and also decentralized players who are also looking at it. And that sort of leads you to the law. And the law obviously is set, by virtue of elections, and that's democracy. And then it goes to the gentleman who spoke with the English accent before me, about agency. And that's where you want to be self-sovereign. You want to be able to make those decisions, but your decisions are influenced through your perceptions. And that's where it becomes, well, are our perceptions being manipulated by the next subject you talked about, which is AI? And so the questions that come up is, should AI, when aggregated, so once you get the wisdom of crowds, which is aggregated by Google and the technocracy and, or Apple, etc., when they have information asymmetry, then you get the Arby's scenario where you get automation of jobs, and then you get the digitization of value, and it leads you to the final point, which is that we really need a declaration of digital independence where you can be self-sovereign in that whole economic cycle.
Yeah, that was amazing. Though another point that I wanted to like just kind of create a line between was the just menial labor, and how humans before, you would like, if you're working in a hotel, you're in the service industry, right? So people actually hired you for the level of service you could deliver. So I remember hotel managers would say, you're not working to just clean, you're working for the people. So you give them a smile, you do all of this and you do all of that, right? And with, I don't know what happened or what changed, but people come to work and just go to do their job. So now it's menial labor. It's not like the human element has left of the labor, right? So, and we were speaking last week about all of the bullshit tech jobs, like saying yes or no, is this porn, is this not porn, and the people that kind of have mental breakdowns on that. And I was wondering, would that labor be now put to the humans who do menial labor and menial tasks today? And how is it going to shift? Because obviously there is automation, but there's a whole load of backlog or back channels that humans still have to be a part of, and it happens on a computer, correct? So yeah, I was just thinking about that, and those lines in between them.
Yeah, and this is John. If I can riff a little bit on the future of labor, Vint Cerf, who invented TCP/IP and is credited with being one of the fathers of the internet, more than 10 years ago, started an initiative called Innovation for Jobs, I4J, and has macroeconomists, microeconomists, uh, tech OGs, and has been very, very active on this issue of the future of jobs for a full decade now. And one of the things that I think there's pretty broad agreement in that group is that there will, in fact, in 20, 30 years, not be a shortage of decent jobs. There'll be a lot more collaborative jobs with humans and AI. But the problem, and this is something that I'm keenly focused on, the problem is bridging the gap between now and then. If we're forced to implement UBI because of the abrupt displacement of jobs with AI and robotics, how do we unwind that in ways that give people the opportunity to have the dignity of having a productive job in a collaborative robotics environment? So I think if we can get through the next decade or two of massive disruption and disruption of how to maintain people's dignity without resulting in kinetic conflict, is going to be the real challenge. But in the end, there's a lot of optimism that collaborative robotics and the restoration of human dignity in those jobs will allow relatively unskilled, relatively undereducated people to be very productive in collaboration with robotics. So, Nicholas, I'd be really interested in your thoughts on that, because that's been a consensus with that group for 5 or 6 years in conjunction with the promotion of the concept of techno deflation, where what you get for a dollar continues to rise as a countervailing force to all the infusion of capital globally. I'm curious about your thoughts on both those.
Yeah,
there's also a rise in labor strikes, right, and unionization. So especially with these tech companies as well, like, and it's super interesting that it's mainly like the major tech companies that are seeing this unionization. So when it comes to the medial tasks that humans actually do, such as the Arby's example, I wonder if, people are going to ask for those jobs back, and the real people taking their jobs are just robots and, burger flippers and stuff like that.
I'll be honest though, that job, the drive-through window, is the hardest job in the building, because you're taking the orders, you're handing food. It's very fast-paced. You don't know what's on the other end. Sometimes they're drunk. Sometimes they just want to be belligerent. So I think taking the biggest weight off of that particular role, which is taking the food and giving it to the customer, might be beneficial for that worker.
If I just respond, because it was a well-posed question. In respect of automation and in respect of Vint Cerf and the future of labor, I think we have to come to the realization that if governments are going to create credit, what we're going through is a move away from people owning things, as we've seen, from capital to cash flow, and that people become subscribers to life, essentially, and that you buy the Amazon bundle or you buy the Xi Jinping bundle, and you pays your money and you takes your choice, and you live in a country that has a certain way of doing things. And many Chinese people, when I've spoken, have said you shouldn't speak about this subject because you don't know, because a lot of people are very happy with the system. And the question is, do they even know whether they're happy or they're not happy, because their perceptions are controlled by state-run media. So it becomes something of a very esoteric discussion. But philosophically, I think we all need to understand that just like we had a Declaration of Independence that said we hold these truths to be self-evident, we now can say we don't have self-evident truths, and that the future of technology is to enable us to discern the truth better, such that we can govern ourselves better, and that we build on the basis of democracy.
Okay. So somebody just sent in this one, I think it was Anna in the audience, that Mercedes-Benz invents a car that you can control with your mind. Are you annoyed by constantly going through the menus on your car's touchscreen? And Mercedes-Benz has a very futuristic solution. On Monday at the IAA Mobility 2020 show in Munich, Germany, the company displayed the next iteration of its Vision AVTR concept car. According to Mercedes-Benz, the car now has tech that lets you perform certain tasks just by thinking about them. It's based on visual perception. The car has light dots projected on the car's digital dashboard, and the BCI, brain computer interface device, with wearable electrodes is attached to the back of the user's head, which you can see in the photos I just tweeted out. And you can see the wildest dashboard you will ever see in your life in this car. After a short calibration period, the device can record and measure brain activity. So when the user focuses on a specific light on the dashboard, the device can detect that and perform a certain task. So you don't need to reach out your hand and touch it. It knows that you want it to be touched, basically. So this device that you wear on your head connects with the car's interface system, the dashboard, and as we call it in America, and you can operate the dashboard with your thoughts. Kind of a combination of eye tracking and intent through BCI. Makes sense, actually. And it no doubt can work right now. It might take a little bit of training, but like I said, I was at...
You would have to control the car with your conscious mind, and driving is a good example of how you drive with the subconscious mind, and the conscious mind only comes into force when there's an emergency. So building something to represent the eyes and the hands is, really a waste of technology. Why wouldn't you just automate the driving, let the car do the driving? You don't have to concentrate. If you had to concentrate the whole time,
this is
it'd be
more
terrible.
about controlling the car for non-driving functions like the radio and the video that you want to watch, and calling somebody on the interface, and kind of the other aspects of the car that are the non-driving elements of the car.
Yeah, I really want
Yesterday,
to
there,
credit the. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Cheryl.
sorry, yesterday there was a closing ceremony for the Paralympics. So there's this this vegetable guy sleeping in the hospital in Paris. He was actually using his eyes and conscious to control the computer to DJ for the gathering in Paris that took over the Paralympic. I thought that was really amazing.
Yeah, I also wanted to note that we spoke, I believe it was either Saturday or Friday, of being able to control limbs, like people who were amputees were able to like control their fingertips and their hands with their minds and stuff like that. And obviously that's a huge leap in prostheses and just that whole area of expertise. I would wish yeah, Evan posted it on the September 3rd, so or September 2nd, I should say. But it looks really interesting, and just being someone who lives with these conditions and stuff like that, it's so interesting to be able to see that you can do human things and you can be just as everybody else without any impeding or stuff like that. Yeah, I
I
think it's
think,
interesting.
yeah, I think limb wise, it makes a lot of sense. I actually like that concept, but I think in terms of operating a car like an able body, um, trying to operate a car, I think with all these technologies, it's getting a bit silly, to be honest. That's my opinion anyway. I think it's just going to make a lot of people lazy. I
Well,
think
wouldn't you say like being able to just say air conditioner on or being able to turn the air conditioner on without wearing your limb that has your mind control device on it, isn't it better for the person in the car rather than having to wear it all the time, because these devices chafe and all sorts, so, and they also need to be charged and like just rejigged and all of these other things, so
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just I just feel like a lot of these things, most of these things are unnecessary.
So
But it's the world we're living in. It's where we're going in it. So we just have to get used to it.
yeah, there's inexpensive devices that can be fit on around your head, which can be programmed to sense very minuscule. I mean, your thoughts is how they describe it, but I mean, as I've said before, I got into a soccer match with a with a controllable little miniature soccer ball and little miniature goals, and a friend and I put on these headsets, and with practically 1 minute of training, we then fight to control the ball with our minds, and then I try and push the ball into his goal, and he tries to push the ball into my goal with nothing but our thoughts. And you can control the ball by telling it to move forward or left or right and back. And similarly, you could then program a similar system to, instead of moving the ball right, that means send my mom a text message, and instead of moving the ball left, it means start playing my Spotify playlist. Instead of moving the ball forward, it means this or that. So you could start programming a sensor that you wear around your head to understand particular thoughts as little electric signatures, as controls. So I don't think it's that far away.
yeah, that was
Do you think those words would be more, do you think those thoughts would be more precise than words? Because you know how difficult it is on
Yeah,
voice input to get the right
certainly for
outputs. What do you think? How well do you think machines could understand people's
perhaps if
thoughts?
you have a non-California accent, it might be a big benefit. Many of my Swedish friends complain about how these Siris and Alexas are always, Swedish is one of the last languages to always be added, and their English their style of speaking English is not so friendly with the default algorithm. So
Yeah, I was literally about to say that if you have like, let's say, an African accent or Indian accent, and your home language isn't actually in these computers, which is part of the problem with a lot of these programs. Yeah, even me myself, I have to clear my throat to use my Siri. So, that little split second before, or that split second that you can use to control something versus having to say a whole sentence or a whole command is time efficient more so than anything else.
That made me smile. I urge everyone to go and look at, there's a sketch of two Scottish guys trying to use a lift with voice control, which is very funny. I don't know if you've seen it. 11.
Hey,
Yes.
Tyler. I have a great. You were talking about this the other day, and I was going to say something, but you guys were all on a roll, so I didn't pipe in. But I was working on a project with the Gates Foundation a few years ago in northern India, and the manufacturer of this technology that we were deploying, which was a low-cost dual device to measure both pulse oximetry and respiratory rate in children, and the idea was that it was like it would give you, it was very focused on pneumonia, pediatric pneumonia, so it would give you a binary decision based on an algorithm. So for the user who would very kind of unskilled frontline health worker that's seeing a kid that's coming in with cough or trouble breathing, mom or auntie says, so they put this little clip on, and after 60 seconds it gives you a decision, both as a visual cue on the device itself, but then there was an audio component, which was part of kind of the Gates Foundation's target product profile, kind of the minimum specs that they wanted for this for low resource settings. And so, but the company that was, had the manufacture the tech itself is a Southern California company. So here we were in this um, really kind of low resource environment in Uttar Pradesh. And with the first time we tested out, because we literally had the thing DHL'd over to our project site in Lucknow. We tested it out and had the audio on, and this great Valley Girl voice says, after we're put the finger clip on, run it, says, "No pneumonia detected." We were just like, okay,
No
this is
pneumonia detected.
this is a problem not just for our deployment in India, but hello company, you may want to have someone else starting to do your audio cues on your device made for low resource settings, because the Valley Girl isn't going to work.
Okay. So the next headline here, Evan shared this one from the Wall Street Journal, that wallets are over. Your phone is everything now. Mobile payments replacing credit cards was just the start. A digital driver's license, work ID, and other card holdouts are coming to your smartphone. And without opening the article, I can tell it's all about Apple's iOS 15, which is going to handle your IDs, including your state IDs, and maybe even before long your national IDs. And here it comes. So you might be able to, as they say, get rid of your wallet. The next one's from Poppy from the Guard.
But they're all about privacy.
Yes. The next one is from Poppy from The Guardian. The headline reads, I believe it's a mental health issue, the rise of Zoom dysmorphia, that people are spending hours each day on Zoom calls, and that's led to a boom in plastic surgery. The phenomenon has been nicknamed Zoom dysmorphia by the dermatologist and Harvard Medical School professor Dr. Shadi Koroush, who has noticed an increase in appointment requests for appearance-related issues during the pandemic. I was concerned that the time spent on these cameras was negatively affecting people's perceptions of their appearance, she says. And she likens the video conference via phone camera to a funhouse mirror, because she says people are not looking at the true reflection of themselves. They don't realize it's a distorted mirror. She says factors such as the angle and how close we are to the camera mask how we really look. At the start of the pandemic, she noticed a strange pattern in the types of consultations she was getting. People were clamoring to get into cosmetic surgeries during a time when people were being encouraged to not take any unnecessary medical risks. The preoccupation with how people felt they looked was unusual. She noted that there had been a spike in specific requests for nose jobs and smoothing out of forehead wrinkles. And the more she looked into it, the more she wondered in what ways these could be connected to the time spent on video conferencing. People were complaining about sagging skin in the lower face and neck. We wondered if it was because people were holding their smartphones at odd angles when they were looking down. She says in March of this year, British plastic surgeons reported a 70% increase of consultations.
Turn the video off. That's why we all like
Yes.
Clubhouse. It's audio.
Yes, fair point. Pop, yeah.
And we actually can use filters as well. I just tweeted an example of that to you on the TN8WB.
Yeah, and when I'm on Zoom calls, I do the extra big eyebrows just to kind of get some laughs.
Oh, the unibrow.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And then, Dr. Danish, are you on stage here? You want to do this CNN article?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly enough, if people know Mark Lowry, but Mark Lowry, or Mark Lohr, I don't know how to say his last name, but he's the founder of Jet.com, sold his company for $1 billion to Walmart. He went on to go back to Walmart and become the head of e-commerce, which, if anybody's been paying attention, has been a huge gain for Walmart. He then retired this year unexpectedly, um, and said he had three goals. One was to advise startups, the other was to spend more time with family, and the third was to build a new city. And he just unveiled today that in the US, in the desert, he's going to build a new city called Tolosa. And he is actually starting with first finding the inhabitants and then having those inhabitants be a part of the decision making process on how they want the city to be built, and then building a smart city based on what their needs are. Very interesting model. I honestly would not have taken anybody seriously unless it was someone who started Jet.com, which I think most people would say was a very, very well done and very well executed e-commerce website. But yeah, I'm super excited about this, and just thinking about, like, everything from transportation to healthcare and all of these things here in the US kind of being reimagined from the ground up based on the inhabitants of the city.
Sounds
It's
like,
a fascinating.
Yeah,
sorry.
didn't we speak about this with
With
Bjark Ingles? Is this
it
the same
is,
city?
and we talked about it on Friday, but CNN
Thursday.
is doing a piece on it today, and it Björk Ingels is the Danish kind of the hottest name in large scale architecture projects of this kind. Yeah,
Starchitects.
and
Yeah.
Starchitect, yeah, as they're called, and so no better person to bring into it. But I think the really interesting bit isn't even the architectural aspect of it; it's their concepts around equity of all of the stakeholders and how they plan to not have the kind of traditional gatekeeping, rent-seeking, land ownership model. They want all the inhabitants to share in the ownership and of the city, of this futuristic city.
I
It
mean, think
sounds,
about it. I'm
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that sounds like a DAO,
Yes,
one of the
exactly right.
decentralized autonomous
You're exactly right.
organizations. And my guess is that they'll have ways in which they give, I'm just making it up, a token for
Yeah.
governance. And the more you involved in the
Yes.
governance and a positive element, the more you get of these tokens, which gives you more X or more Y within the city. And if the city and whatever state it's in, if it follows some of the laws that were implemented in Wyoming relating to DAOs, then you have, a structure there that gives limited liability to the citizens.
I've
And
always
kind of
thought.
taking
Yeah.
one thing I was going to mention is, sorry, one thing that's interesting to what Donna just said is customers as owners has shown in every industry. There's like legitimately case studies, and that's what this article talked about. But I was doing a little deep dive on this, and they were talking about customers as owners or stakeholders as owners has actually been shown independently across every industry to work. Even which is obviously where I always go, which is healthcare. There is a health system in Alaska that is owned by the patients. I don't know if you guys will be surprised to hear this, but it's one of the most well functioning, best outcomes, happiest patients in the country or even the world. And so, like, this concept of having the stakeholders actually own not just the real estate, but all the services, all the utilities are co owned by the inhabitants, I have to say is just magical sounding, but
maybe it'll work. We'll see.
So
Well, it's
I
a
think
little
it's remarkable.
I
utopian
I
would
think
sounding.
it's
like.
remarkable, but at the same time, it's not new. I see it as another example of how we can stand to learn from more indigenous or traditional or quote unquote less developed societies that are more collective in nature. So we're moving. I mean, I love what I'm hearing. It's just that, I think that there's a lot that's happening in places that maybe we're not looking that we could continue to
This
learn
is such
from.
a good point,
This
I
Lakeisha.
is
do.
this is
I,
this is where I can't understand that America is, for like it or not, the last example of this collective energy, and it's supposed to be harnessed in democracy. And it's funny seeing entrepreneurs deciding, instead of trying to build towards democracy and build towards this in New York or LA or wherever else across the country, they have to go to the desert and start to build a new world. And it's almost like Elon and going and building his new world on Mars.
yeah, and it's
You
a little
know,
bit utopian too,
Yeah,
well, it's
Nicholas.
a little
Right?
bit
I mean,
egocentric when we
it's more.
think that
Yeah,
we've got a system, if only we could take control of it.
yeah.
Tyler,
I
I
were you
do
wanted to
raising
worry
your
add
about.
hand
that.
to say?
I do worry it just becomes another kind of giant gated community. You see these around the U.S. where
Exactly.
basically, everyone who gets through the gate is living in a like sort of wonderland, and our cities are decaying. So I hope it's open and transparent and inclusive, and not just a big gated
You
I
community.
can
wanted to take
guarantee it will
another
have a
spin of it.
centralized identity
Um,
schema.
just on the design aspects of it. Like, I wonder how long they want to take to build it, considering it's a mega structure and
They
not
say
just one.
first
It's a whole
first
city's worth.
residents by 2030. It says in the article for 50,000 residents
Because yeah,
on 1,500
I
acres.
can't. From
So he's
my
basically building a
yeah,
kibbutz in the desert.
and this is happening in obviously Nigeria, like Victoria also like design sort of that aspect, but more so than anything else, I feel like there's this inclination to do mega structures from the world's richest to not gate themselves, but to see if they can do it and to see if they can live like someone who's created something amazing, much like the Gothic architecture before us, or the Great Wall of China, or all of these other mega structures, the basilisk. Like, these things are noteworthy and will stand the test of time, because when we're all dead and gone, it's like that's going to still be standing, and there will be notes there to say this is the type of civilization that once was.
I mean,
I would say
where's
yes,
Faraz?
and
Isn't
it's about the community. So I think that if the values are correctly implemented, I think yes, there might be the physical structures, but then there's also this collectivist, communal, we're in it together kind of model that I think we could all learn from.
I would note that, like, when we're all gone, like, the people that come after us, they're not gonna understand how exactly we lived, but more so just the remnants of what we deliver to them. And obviously paper will decay, but stuff like cities will kind of stand the test of time more so than anything else.
I liked your point, Lakeisha, about how we're coming full circle back to the realization of perhaps our original I think we're finding it hard to escape millennia of tribal wiring that that evolved over time, that we somehow got away from temporarily, but are now continue to try to recapture.
The government, Tyler, it's because the governments recognize there is this primal urge to tribalize, and they've exploited that to destroy
Yeah, but
society.
that's
I mean,
the kind of the dark side of the tribalist point.
they realize if they make it A B that they don't have to work with B.
All right.
But
Like
humans generally work in groups and like to create a collective consciousness regardless, right? And you
talk
know
to anyone on the left or the right. They don't. The left doesn't want the right doesn't want the left. Like that's where
well,
we're at.
humans always create a left and a right, right? It's like, do we want to
But
go
what about
eat
us in
at
the
this type
center?
of
What
food?
about us in the center that just want to
It's
move
there's
civilization forward?
there's generally a center that makes it move, but the center moves very slow. It's more so the people that have ideas and want to execute them they don't necessarily live in the center. They live more on this is the way that we're going to do it, or that's the way that we're going to do it, right? So, and in that, there's also splinters. So when we're looking at globalization, people like it's come to the point where people find that they've got a community, but it's worldwide, right? So now it's time for ideas that come just like this one to say, let's centralize ourselves and be all in one place at once. Like before this, it was Silicon Valley, right? So it was like this is the best place to do this type of thing. So geeks all around the world wanted to move to Silicon Valley, right? And just as financial structures in England as well, they're like, this is the best place to do this type of work. And a lot of people came and, you know, just the best place to educate our children, so on and so forth. But now it's coming to the point where people have an exorbitant amount of money. And if you really do come together as a true community, such as like these Burning Man and all of these other places, right, then you can create something. But that's only if you make the decision. And the center, the people that live in the grays and, you know, that don't really know what side is which, don't necessarily make those type of big
I
decisions.
liked
So I'm
real
sorry, go
quick.
ahead,
I
Tyler.
really like Donna's point about this sounds Taoish, and it sounds to even go a little further. It sounds like a physical manifestation of Axie Infinity, which is a, a rather successful virtual city, for lack of a better word, and it works on the same premise. We're on coins and the governance of even Axie Infinity as a project, as an app, or as an alternative to think of Minecraft. And then you had Minecraft, and then you had Roblox, and then Axie Infinity really takes it even one step further, where you can own part of Axie Infinity and have control and voting rights of Axie Infinity, the quote unquote company or the organization, based on your actions in the ecosystem. And this is all, of course, virtual. It's all virtual land, and people are buying virtual land and da, 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 da. But this seems to be almost like a physical bricks and mortar version of an Axie Infinity, where people will collectively share ownership. It's not based on purchase of land plots as kind of the fundamental point that Mr. Lore is telling the journalists about anyway. That it's a wild idea, and then just that whole point of tribal element of how I think it is hard to get away from the tribal nature of humanity, having spent most of our collective evolution living in that format, and in many ways we still do, but to almost embrace the more positive aspects of it. And I think, Chris, you bring up a great point of how the negative aspects of tribalism are those flames are fanned by the powers that be in governments when it suits their agendas and needs. But I think we could agree that there actually are positive aspects to living in a tribal structure where we agree there is no owner of the land, so to speak, and the power dynamics within, I think, traditional tribes were probably had some things that we could, as Lakeisha said, kind of learn from and kind of circle back to in a way. Yeah,
Tyler, is this going back to like the communes of the 70s?
that's where I think
That
Nicholas
is
So
funny.
hit it
Yeah.
pretty spot on with the kibbutz thing. I think that's also something that could be done at a larger scale in a tech kibbutz or something.
Well, that's the point, right? Is that people, what we're talking about as a whole across the whole last hour or so, is about a form of singularity, and the singularity that we're talking about is the merging of machines, in inverted commas, or technology and humans, and E.O. Wilson talks about this, who's an evolutionary biologist, and he notes that, of course, we have gene culture coevolution, and we have our genetics, and then on the other side of the equation, we have mimetics, which is where people copy people, and someone models a behavior, and then they follow them. The natural outgrowth of this has been democracy, and I think what we're witnessing is a breakdown. With the post-truth era, post-2014, and the Facebook exploit, and we saw that perceptions are controlled by these interfaces that we're using, where we're merging with machines because they're influencing our thoughts. And then we get to the post-trust environment, where people are trying to say they're not even going to engage with the political system. They're so alienated from it that they want to build their own worlds in the desert or on Mars. And these are new models. These are, if you looked in the big, swathes of history, these are the meme kings. That's why I call them mimetic kings that are modeling new behaviors, and people are following those leaders. They're the new leaders. And I think this is what's interesting. But what we need to understand as regular people in the middle, is that we can just use the democratic branches of government if we can only get control of our voting rights using systems that give us back our democracy, because these are fantastic. The nation state that is open to all is much better than separating into our tribes.
And taking it a step further, also, I will say, just to push back a little bit on the commentary around why aren't we doing this with our own cities and so on, I have to say there is this challenge of trying to recreate or work around existing rotten infrastructure that's like like physical infrastructure and political infrastructure. I mean, all of these things are deterrents to like true development. And while yes, these are billionaires that are going out there and building this in the middle of the desert, he didn't just go out and say, I'm going to build it my way, right? And so we do want to be thoughtful about the fact that like it would take an enormous amount of time to rebuild the infrastructure to be smart from the ground up. And so going out in the middle of the desert and rethinking, for example, like again, healthcare infrastructure or utility infrastructure or political and also more importantly, currency infrastructure, like you guys were talking about, and ownership infrastructure, that's not something you can do in a lived environment, in the current built environment. And I think that like,
If we controlled our democracies, if we could vote and we could have
sure,
accurate information, we could vote in good leaders that we could all get behind, and we could have New York working this way. Building from scratch is not how evolution works. All knowledge is built on the shoulders of others, and we need to build together.
No one's really building from scratch. Like a city is still a city more so than anything else. The way that cities work is just urban planning, right? It's an urban development, and humans have been building those since even the
Yeah,
1700s.
and I
Like
mean, but look
we've
look at
been
Dubai.
replicating them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look at Dubai. I mean, love it or hate it. Some people hate it. I
Mm,
like it, but that was built out of the desert. I mean,
yeah. I
really,
exactly.
also
almost
want to
nothing
know.
there. So, and I would call it a
Yeah.
success. I mean, so yeah.
I also want to
That was
note
built
that
out of the Patriot
these.
Act. That's
Yeah.
what built that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go further into Dubai, but I also want to note that there's a difference between the old money billionaires, the ones that like let's say own London, right? And who owns what and all of the papers that go behind those and where that money came from versus the new money billionaires who you can see what they built and they probably don't even want to reconcile with the old money billionaires and work with them because there's a lot of quote unquote dirty money that goes into that.
You
So
need an incentive system. You have to come up with a new incentive system. And the incentive system that has been most successful, although it has a problem of concentration of capital, is
mm,
capitalism. And we're at the end of crony capitalism. And that's the point. It's technology plus humanity plus some independence, privacy, and all the other things that we've earned should enable us to take our existing systems and evolve them rather than try to
yeah,
come up. I can't understand what new paradigm people are going to use to incentivize people to do these things. You have to
yeah,
have incentives.
we're generally in agreement. I just feel like he's not building anything new. More so than anything else, it's how are people going to use what has been built, right? Because maybe, yes, you can build a city in 10 years, right? But after then, it's what are the people's mentality like? And is everyone being vetted properly to want to be like how you're saying, Nicholas? Because the reality is humans will human at the end of the day. And I don't feel like when we start talking about good versus bad, evil versus the great, and the heroes versus the villain, all of these things, that's not a humanistic trait. Humanistic traits are more so on a spectrum of understanding, and yeah, humans are human.
Okay, next headline is somebody, Anna just sent in this one about UC University of California, San Diego, my alma mater. just did a partnership with Aura Ring, who I like to think of as friends. They launched the Aura Ring at our event. I think they were part of the 2009 or 2010 group, and I think they won Best Hardware that year, actually. And now they've become wildly successful in recent years. They're out of Helsinki, Finland. And Petri, I still think, is one of the most humble, down-to-earth founders I've ever met. And Aura and UC San Diego announced a study because it can do temperature readings while you sleep, and basically, as a result of this study, they were able to detect pregnancy after 5 days of conception, and which is much better than most at-home pregnancy type scenarios. So it's interesting to see how data is now, from an Aura ring, which was never designed to have anything to do with pregnancy tests, or but is able to, due to its ability to accurately track sensitive temperature changes, can detect all kinds of interesting things for which it was not originally intended.
Including COVID. I use an app on Aura to basically tell me if I have very subtle temperature increases, and that's a predictor potentially of COVID a few days in advance if you get elevated temperatures. So
That
very
was from
innovative.
UC
Well,
SF.
that would be very important, that ring, Tyler, in Texas
Yes.
now. So if you could know you were pregnant within 5 days of
Yep.
conception, then you can deal with whatever you want to think of about your future in a way that is compliant with that
Right.
Texas law, but also
Yep.
That's a
very
great point,
time
Donna.
sensitive.
That's a great point. And yeah, that's a great point. And also, yeah, back to, I think it was Ebony said it on the Aura Ring. They did those studies and they actually can track and tell people that they may have COVID before the people have any symptoms. And they started doing that. I think that they figured that out kind of back at the beginning of the pandemic. It was one of the golfers that they pulled from one of the major golf tournaments. And then it turned
Yeah.
out he came with COVID. Yeah.
Also, it would be helpful in China so that Uncle Chi can know whether you're meeting your quota.
Especially if they start tracking ovulation, and then they can really put you in the optimum in the queue, in the dating app, in the Tinder.
Why is Al Green playing right now?
But it's in the Chinese culture that they don't usually disclose until 3 months stability.
Okay, next one is from Bloomberg, from Faraz, that Mercedes-Benz is now showing the renderings of their electronic G-Class, which is their Jeep, look very rather nice and not cheap Jeep series, which they call the G-Class. And now they've revealed the electric G-Class is a dream come true for people who want that, been waiting for their G series electric, and there it is. So the next one's from Edwin, that autonomous driving car level 4 by Volkswagen expected to drive on the German roads by 2025. And then what's interesting about that is Germany will allow level 4 cars to operate on their roads. So VW feels they're on track to be driving on the roads by 2025. And the next one's from Abgent, sends in this one from CBS News, that authorities race to contain deadly new virus outbreak in India called the Nipah virus. And the virus is far deadlier than COVID, and it last claimed Indian lives in 2018, killing 17 of the 18 people who caught it from a contaminated family well. And how much is it spreading now is the main question. So I'm opening it to find out. It says the authorities in India's southern Kerala state are racing to contain the outbreak. The virus, which is not related to coronavirus, is far more deadly, killed a 12-year-old boy over the weekend, prompting step-up efforts to trace his contacts. New infections have been confirmed. The boy has admitted to a hospital a week ago with a high fever, and his condition worsened, and doctors suspected inflammation of his brain. His blood samples were sent to the National Institute of Virology, where tests were confirmed that it was Nipah infection. He died on Sunday. Government authorities have stepped up contact tracing efforts, identifying, quarantining, and testing people who might have come into contact. According to the state's health minister, 188 people who came into contact with the boy have been identified. Of them, 20 were considered high risk, primarily his family members, all of whom have been under strict quarantine. 2 hospital workers who came into contact with the victim were already showing symptoms of the virus on Monday. They were admitted to a hospital and their blood samples sent for testing. Authorities sealed off the area within a 2-mile radius of his home and were screening people for symptoms in all adjoining districts. The neighboring state of Tamil was also on high alert for suspect cases of fever. This is the second time in 3 years that the Nipah virus outbreak has been reported in Kerala, which is also reeling under a high rate of COVID-19 infections. The state reports about 68% of India's approximately 40,000 new cases a day. Like coronavirus, Nipah is a zoonotic virus, or one that is transmitted from animals to humans. Transmission generally occurs when humans either come into direct contact with the animals or through consumption of contaminated food, but a high number of human-to-human transmission cases have also been reported. Fruit bats of the family, commonly known as flying foxes, are the natural carriers. They are known to transmit the virus to either animals, including pigs, dogs, cats, goats, horses, or sheep. In an infected human, typically shows symptoms including fever and headache from anywhere between 3 days to 2 weeks, following by a cough, sore throat, respiratory issues. The condition later progresses swiftly to swelling of the brain cells, leading to drowsiness, confusion, and then possible coma and death. There's no cure or vaccine, and patients are only given supportive medical care. According to the World Health Organization, 75% of the infections are fatal. The mortality rate for the coronavirus, by comparison, is believed to be about 2%. And the virus was first discovered in Malaysia in 1999 during an outbreak among pig farmers. Since then, there have been multiple outbreaks, all of them in South and Southeast Asia. In all, it is known to have killed about 260 people. Yeah, in 2004, Bangladesh outbreak was traced back to humans consuming date palm sap that had been contaminated by infected fruit bats. The last outbreak in India in 2018 killed 17 of the 18 people who were exposed. Those infections are all tracked back to fruit bats found dead in the waters of the family's well. It is considered less contagious than the coronavirus, but it's much higher mortality rate, a longer incubation period of up to 45 days, and its ability to infect a much wider variety of animals make it a cause of significant concern for epidemiologists trying to predict and prevent the next pandemic. Dear God, that's a long incubation period. And let's pray to sweet Jesus that doesn't become more airborne. Holy cow. Can you imagine?
Yeah, the one thing I was going to say is it's also the risk of international transmission. According to the WHO, it's the same article, but I want to make sure that you said this part, which was the risk of international transmission via fruits or fruit products contaminated with urine or saliva from infected fruit bats can be prevented by washing them thoroughly and peeling before consumption. I just wanted to make sure you said that part. Sorry.
That too. But I mean, yeah, that's how this human to human part would be the scary part. If that thing becomes airborne, my God, like nearly everyone who gets it dies, and a 45
It's got a 45-day
day
incubation.
incubation.
Yeah.
Holy sweet Jesus, you could be infecting your whole city without even knowing it.
On the plus side, there won't be any anti-vax or people saying it's a hoax because there's no vaccine or cure.
Yeah, you're right about that. I would love to see people be anti-vax about the BioNTech mRNA vaccine that would essentially be a vaccine for this.
Tyler,
Yeah.
Ranjit here. I come from the state called Kerala where this is being now spreading, and this is there's a slight correction in this article that this is the third time it's coming to Kerala. The first was 2018, then 2019, and this is the third time. And the place, and it is the same place. It is been affected the third time, so which is pretty interesting. And one of the most populated areas also in this part of the state. So
Ranjit,
it,
Ranjit, it's in Kozhikode? Is it?
pardon?
Is it in Kozhikode?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know so I just had a phone call with our newborn team there not a week ago, and of course we were talking about different things. So this didn't come up, and I noticed it over the weekend on the news feeds again. But there is, as Tyler suggested, the COVID situation there is not good at all, and the increase, particularly in pediatric cases, has been overwhelming. At least our two hospitals we work at there for Newborn Foundation, but it's really it's a terrible time to deal with some other crisis that may have more widespread implications. But as you suggest, maybe the third time in the state, there must be something there, either with that zoonotic population or how food goods are being handled. But it's quite resource poor there, and so one can understand where street markets and vendors and how this can happen.
Is there any talk? Is there any talk
exactly.
of killing the fruit bats?
Generally, no, I don't think. Usually they do it for the chicken and all those stuff if something spread it through that, but not. It's pretty hard to do this in the bat thing. That never happened, at least for the previous years.
Okay.
Bats may also be contributing to the pollination because I think it is a very tea-heavy region, so they produce some of the most amazing teas in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, and this is pretty kind of very forest. There is a lot of forest. It's a Western Ghats area, so it's a lot of forest and I think vegetation and all this stuff. A lot of cultivation and all this stuff. So it's quite natural that it comes there. Considering both these situations, COVID also is kind of pretty extreme in Kerala. I personally don't know whether what is right and what is wrong, but the strategy Kerala followed was like we will be in lockdown. So what happened was that according to the latest report or something, only 40% of the people in Kerala actually got COVID, which is much lesser, much lesser than what in India actually got. So that has created a pretty havoc in the state because the neighboring state, which it was told in the article, Tamil Nadu, they have opened everything almost. They have opened theaters, they have opened schools, almost everything is normal. But in Kerala, still almost everything is in lockdown. A lot of places are still in lockdown. So maybe it's a bad strategy we have followed. I don't know, but considering COVID and this, it's a pretty much bad situation because Tamil Nadu already almost closed the borders. Bangalore, that border is also, they are scrutinizing the border. I think yesterday Qatar told that they're gonna monitor the situation because a lot of people, around 6 million people from Kerala are, I think, working in the Middle East, Dubai, and all those places. So that is going to be another big problem. So it's a little bit bad situation.
Okay. So the next one is even more fun. As if that wasn't fun enough, Australia reporting yesterday that South China Sea showdown continues as world pushes back against Beijing. A showdown in the South China Sea continues as China's stranglehold is called into question by the world superpowers. Satellite photos expose a showdown brewing in the South China Sea. Against all assurances, Beijing has armed its artificial island fortresses with aircraft and warships. Now the world is pushing back. Beijing said it guaranteed free and open access to the South China Sea's shipping lanes. Beijing said it would never militarize the region, but that's now changed. Between May and June, satellite photos found Chinese Y-8Q and KQ-200 anti-submarine and KJ-500 radar command aircraft, along with anti-submarine and troop-carrying helicopters, had become a permanent feature on the artificial Subi and Mischief Reef island fortresses. ISI intelligence reports reveal China's new KQ-200 ASW mission planes during training exercises, and since then, the People Liberation Army and Navy destroyers and frigates have joined them. Now, a new set of satellite imagery, reveals what they've been up to hunting submarines, and they've had plenty to keep them busy. Submarines from all over the world have been converging on the disputed South China Sea in support of a 2015 International Court of Arbitration ruling. China, it found, had no historical basis for claiming control over the entire 3.5 million square kilometer waterway, and the standardized set of territorial rules agreed upon by the United Nations after World War II still applies to the likes of Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Beijing rejected that ruling. Now the activities of the combat aircraft and fort line warships at Subi Reef indicate it may be about to take bold new steps in enforcing its claims. China passed a new law this week demanding any international vessel that may endanger the maritime traffic safety of China must register its presence, secure and schedule. Oh, it must register its presence, schedule, and intention. So they're now trying to police the South China Sea, which the UN says they don't own, but they are claiming they own. And now they've militarized these man-made islands that they've put in the middle of the South China Sea. And operators of submersibles, nuclear vessels, ships carrying radioactive materials, and ships carrying bulk oil, chemicals, liquefied gas, and other toxic, harmful substances are required to report their detailed information upon their visits to Chinese territorial waters, which again, China's claiming they own, but nobody else agrees with. And everyone's insisting very politely to China that they don't own this South China Sea. And now China has militarized the South China Sea. And now you know why the US, the UK, Australia, India, France, Germany, Japan, and others have their navies in the South China Sea simultaneously. The problem is nobody's going to reveal to Beijing where the submarines are or if they're nuclear powered or nuclear armed. Nobody believes that Beijing has the right to demand this information, and nobody agrees with Beijing's definition of its territorial waters. France revealed earlier this year that its nuclear-powered attack submarine, the SNA Emerald, had passed through the contested waterway, but not exactly where. This extraordinary patrol has just completed a passage in the South China Sea, a striking proof of our French Navy's capacity to deploy far away and for a long time together with our Australian, American, and Japanese strategic partners, says Defense Minister Florence Parly. Since then, the United States has sent all three of its most advanced submarines, these nuclear subs. I told you this a month ago, did I not, Cheryl? That
Yep, Tyler. We've been watching this.
was I not the first was I not the
Yeah.
first person to tell you this? This was unreported news that I revealed here.
Yes.
This was unreported news
Correct.
by
So
Tyler.
now it's being reported. Since then, the U.S. has sent all three of its most advanced
Are you a genius
submarines,
or
which,
what?
by the way, and I'll tell you more that this journalist doesn't know in a second, led by the USS Seawolf into the Pacific. That's over and above the regular patrols by USS Los Angeles and Virginia class submarines, and the UK's nuclear attack submarine HMS Artful has been somewhere in the area in recent weeks. It's been supporting the passage of the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is the Royal Navy's biggest aircraft carrier. Australia, Japan, Taiwan, Indonesia, Singapore, and South Korea are just some of the regional navies operating diesel-electric submarines. And while many navies have been reluctant to visibly defy Beijing by sending warships within 12 nautical miles of its island fortresses, they may have been doing so unseen. Anti-submarine warfare has been a significant element of both Chinese and U.S. activities in the South China Sea in recent months. Surveillance aircraft from both sides regularly scour its waters, survey vessels, probes its depths, and that intense surface and above surface activity may just be the tip of the iceberg. Beijing's
Yeah, those attack subs are no joke, man.
no,
Those fuckers have multiple warheads on them, ready to go at any
yeah,
time.
and we've never in our history ever had the three of them together in any one place, and it's a strategic investment to do so. It says
Yeah, first strike. I mean, it would be a 2 minutes surface to surface.
no, but it's you're basically moving all of your chess pieces all into one tiny corner of the chessboard. You're no longer protecting the other three corners of the chessboard when you have.
Yeah, because you've seen where the queen's at, and you know where you're
Right,
gonna make your
right. Well,
run.
but you're also not worried about any other potential conflicts on the planet. Is relatively that's to get that.
And this answers why we left Afghanistan in a hurry, because China's going to send their people there to go find out what they can get out of our equipment, and we're already staged waiting for China, probably October 10th.
Beijing's new arbitrary disclosure requirements came into effect September 1. The fallout is yet to be seen. Exactly what Beijing means by endanger isn't clear anyway, nor is the area it expects the law to apply to. Such ambiguity is likely deliberate, University of Indonesia international law researcher writes, and China's definition of its territorial waters specifically names the Spratly Islands as part of its territorial sea, which is just utter bullshit, by the way. Go ahead and look up the Spratly Islands. They're bird rocks in the middle of the South China Sea, basically. That's the specific claim the International Court of Arbitration rejected in favor of the Philippines, because they're much closer to the Philippines. I mean, to say they're closer to the Philippines than to China is to say that, the South Pole is, closer to Argentina than to fucking Canada. I mean, it's like, of course they're closer to the Philippines. China is nowhere near the Spratly Islands, and they're right off the coast of the Philippines. So China's claims of them is just ridiculous on its face. That's the specific claim of the International Court. But Beijing's arbitrary 9-line claim sweepingly includes almost the entire South China Sea as territorial, and its first island chain policy adds all of Taiwan and the Japanese claimed Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea to the grab bag. It remains unclear where China will seek to enforce its new regulations and how the rest of the international community will respond. What is most important is that China must still guarantee the right of innocent passage and not provoke more tensions in the disputed area of the South China Sea.
Can they just propose to rename the sea to something more like neutral?
Yeah, that'll solve it.
The not
Yeah,
China
that'll solve
Sea.
it.
The
Not
Taiwan,
your sea. Everyone's sea. Share is caring. Sharing is caring. Don't fight.
On somebody sent in this one from Wall Street Journal on the keeping it on the China angle for a second. China's industrial planning evolves, stirring U.S. concerns. Beijing is catching up through technology investments and research, with industrial applications echoing America's strategy. For decades, China pursued a brand of centrally planned economic policies that the U.S. was happy to stand back and watch, but a subtle yet critical recalibration by Beijing, begun almost 15 years ago, has recently set off alarms in Washington about China's goals and tactics, not least because China is catching up in many cases by adopting the past U.S. approaches. Chinese central planning once highlighted targets from farm and factory production, Soviet style. Beijing still uses 5-year plans, but now directs resources into basic scientific research and industrial applications. China's foray into areas like AI and robotics, once dominated by the U.S., helps explain the Biden administration's tilt towards industrial development policies, like spending government money to reassert competitiveness in semiconductor production. Decades of neglect and disinvestment, President Biden lamented in June, have left us at a competitive disadvantage as countries across the globe like China have poured money and focus into new technologies and industries, leaving us at a real risk of being left behind. Beijing also emulates Washington by pouring government investment into its own versions of U.S. government research powerhouses such as the National Institute of Health, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and the National Aeronautics Space Administration, otherwise known as NASA. China aspires to be the first government-steered market economy. University of California, San Diego professor Barry Naughton writes in his newly published book, The Rise of China Industrial Policy. The late Chinese leader, and then it goes on to about Chinese history. So I will spare you that and just retweet that one out. And thank you to the person who sent that in. The next one is also about NASA. NASA researchers have found a way to grow wheat on the International Space Station, and you can watch an actual video of wheat growing in the International Space Station that I just tweeted out. Thank you to Kincha.
And that's WHEAT, right? Not WEED.
Yes.
Okay.
China's Weibo, which is their version of Twitter, bans the Korean supergroup BTS fan account for illegal fundraising. Chinese social media platform Weibo banned a fan club of popular South Korean K-pop band BTS from posting for 60 days, saying it had raised funds from fans illegally days after photographs of customized airplane funded by the fan club were posted online. The fan club account, which had over 1.1 million followers, was centered around BTS member Jimin. The restrictions imposed on the account came amid China's campaign to clean up the entertainment industry and clamp down on irrational behavior exhibited by fans. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for a national rejuvenation with tighter Communist Party control of business, education, culture, and religion. The party has since reduced children's access to online games and is trying to discourage what it sees as an unhealthy attention towards celebrities. Last week, the government banned effeminate men on TV and banned idol development shows for their low moral values that could be a bad influence on the youth. The BTS fan account was banned from posting after images circulated online last week of a customized airplane from Jeju Air with images of Jimin on it. The customized airplane was part of the club's plans to celebrate his 26th birthday in October. The stunt drew swift criticism online for its excess. Following the backlash, the account issued a statement last week on its feed, urging fans to be rational when chasing celebrities for a harmonious and healthy internet environment. Weibo said in a statement Sunday that the group had been banned from posting for 60 days. Weibo firmly opposes such irrational star-chasing behavior and will deal with it seriously. The fan club began raising money in April to prepare for the birthday celebrations. The club also planned to run advertisements celebrating his birthday in the New York Times. It's not uncommon for K-pop fans worldwide to celebrate the birthdays of their favorite celebrities by taking out advertisements in newspapers and billboards or customizing public transport vehicles with images of their idols. Many fans also fundraise to donate to charitable causes such as funding education for the underprivileged. Weibo also said in a separate statement on Sunday that it banned 21 other fan accounts for 30 days for posting irrational star-chasing content. The banned fan accounts were mostly centered around K-pop celebrities such as members of South Korean boy bands NCT and EXO and girl group Blackpink. Celebrities in China are often pressured to conform to values espoused by the Chinese government or face the repercussions. Celebrities such as Fan Bingbing and Zhen Shuang have been fined heavily for evading taxes, and popular actress Zhao Wei last week had her name removed from the credits of films and TV shows she had starred in without explanation. Chinese singer and actor Lu Han, a former member of popular K-pop group EXO, said on Sunday that he would cut ties with Swiss luxury watch brand Piaget after a video circulated online last week of showing its CEO referred to Taiwan as an ultra-modern high-tech country. How dare he? China, which claims so get this, a Korean pop artist is disconnecting with a Swiss watch maker for acknowledging Taiwan. That's how big a business China is for the Korean pop bands.
That's actually
China, which claims Taiwan as its territory, objects to any reference to the self-governing island as a country. Under the one country policy, other countries have diplomatic relations with either China or Taiwan, but not both. And that might be part of the reason all those navies are over there next to Taiwan. They might be about to challenge that point. So the next one from Lakeisha from CNBC, that Amazon is now shipping cargo for outside customers in its latest move to compete with FedEx and UPS. Amazon is on a spending spree in its latest move to compete with FedEx and UPS and put them out of fucking business. It's now shipping cargo for outside customers because it wants to monopolize,
and save on legal expenses because they're spending so much trying to get in SpaceX's way.
The next one's from The Guardian, from Nalormi. It says, lost generation education in quarter of countries at risk of collapse. Study warns. Estimated about 1.5 billion children were out of school during the pandemic, a third unable to access remote learning. The lost generation. As a quarter of countries and about a third of students. 1.5 billion children.
Yeah, I opened an inquiry into just the education of kids that are between the ages of 13 and 18 and seeing what where they rank, and there's even a petition going out to say that the distribution of grades, especially A-star grades and grades that are high, was actually skewed again. So it happened last year and it's then again happening this year. So it's it's one of those things that are it's growing in the UK as well, where it's like these kids aren't necessarily being educated, but yet they're winning grades and things of this other sort as well. But I wonder in 10 years how they would actually look back onto it. But right now, the education for these kids is kind of a bit naff, especially the ones that are in low income areas as
Hey,
well.
I wonder how this is going to change the educational system globally, as some sort of stopgap measure, because now we're pushing, we're nearing the end of 2 years into this pandemic. And so, for the reasons that have just been stated, simply, just kind of patching things over is not going to get us where we need to be as a society. And there are too many deficits that too many children globally are going to that they're experiencing. And so I don't know if it's going to be the rise of, let's say, the junior college or community college model, or something that's going to be a break from the traditional primary, secondary, tertiary kind of trajectory as it relates to how people tend to be educated. But there needs to be something that's going to be a bit more sustained and long term, simply because they've just missed out on too much learning.
Yeah, in this pandemic, as if it's like this.
okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Gareth sends in this. Oh, you
Um.
keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to say that well, these kids are gonna, be part of the working force in the next like 5 to 7 years, 8 years or so. And I wonder if that's gonna push automation because of just the amount of labor that is gonna be terminated. So I wonder if they'll even have the random jobs to build skills up and stuff like that. So there is a bigger picture here.
Okay. So Gareth sends in one that NASA starts testing electric vertical takeoff and landing air taxis with Joby. And you can see a photo of that from the Twitter account. I just sent that out. Nalormi sends in this one from Deutsche Welle, dw.com, out of Germany, that about working 4 days a week is catching on as a potential new concept internationally. Scotland recently approved a trial, and several countries and companies have tried the concept with mixed results. But it's certainly starting to get a lot of people's attention. And then Nalormi sends in this one from Mashable about the Uber of water taxis, and it's a hydrofoil car that glides over the water. And these water taxis could make moving around cities easier through water. And you have to see it from the Twitter account. Then shop.com now accepts Bitcoin payments after partnership with BitPay. The new partnership enables shop.com users to select the BitPay option during checkout to pay with their crypto wallets. And another day, another company announcing they now take Bitcoin, I guess. I think hopefully we're getting to the end of that. And BB sends in this one from Nikkei Japan, that Japan to issue online vaccine certificates in December. Smartphone app will use QR codes to authenticate inoculated records. Froz sends in this one from Bloomberg, that the UAE to grow trade ties in Asia and Africa. And NASA's also experimenting with augmented reality. Here's why. With upcoming explorations to the moon and eventually Mars, NASA's experimenting with tools that can increase astronauts' independence in space. So they can, the people back home can see what they're seeing and guide them in real time in a really cool way through AR. Poppy sends in this one, that drug enforcement feds want AR to monitor the US-Mexico border. The agency is already putting some capabilities to use. And a company wants to make deepfake advertising clones of your face. According to futurism.com, Hour One is a Tel Aviv-based startup that uses real people's likenesses to create AI-generated characters for marketing and educational videos. And you can sell your likeness to them to be used in their product. Solar boom times, solar boom times, as Lebanon's fossil fuels have now run dry, with electricity becoming a scarce commodity, and when the electrical grid has basically gone to shit, and the generators, the fuel to power the generators has now gone dry in Lebanon, thousands of well-off Lebanese rush to solar power. Makes sense. You either move and leave everything behind, or you change energy sources when you run out of traditional energies. Pay attention, everybody else, because, or do the homework and find out if you're in a country that imports or exports energy. And if you're in a country that imports energy, you might want to think about becoming a little more self-sufficient, less dependent on your state that's importing energy for their ability to do so, especially if they don't have a good navy to protect the import of those of that energy, because America is no longer going to be policing your imports and your exports, including the import of your energy. Make sense? So if your country imports energy and you don't have a navy to protect it, you're going to want to protect your own energy supply personally. Or move to a country that exports energy, or move to a country that imports energy and has a navy to protect it, which, by the way, none do other than America. So that's just a little tip if you spend a few years investigating that one. But Lebanon is one of those countries that imported a lot of energy, is no longer able to, has run out of the energy. And now the headline today from AlJazeera.com is that the wealthy people of Lebanon have now converted to solar. Well, they didn't really have a choice, to be honest. So the next one is solar energy program turns homes into virtual power plants. A pilot program is offering Westchester County homeowners an opportunity to not only generate their own solar electricity, but to sell it. And that's one of the other benefits of generating power, is you can sell it back to the city, as these people in Lebanon are likely to do as well. And then last but not least, BB sends in this one that from Forbes, that unemployment benefits for all Americans ends tomorrow for millions of Americans. Unemployment insurance is ending. Are you prepared? For millions of Americans, unemployment benefits due to COVID-19 pandemic will end today for millions of Americans. Unemployment insurance of $300 a week will end for more than 7 million Americans effective today, which brings economic uncertainty amid a resurgence of COVID-19. It's just another 7 million Americans who will become homeless in the very near future. So hopefully they know how to grow vegetables and can go squat on some land somewhere and build themselves a nice little house, start planting some vegetables, maybe near a stream, hopefully not be.
I mean, on that part, Tyler, you know, the reality in America is the reason why we weren't able to do a real lockdown is they were talking that there's about 40% of the population that couldn't cook for themselves for 2 weeks. And that's, you know, what led to them saying we can't lock down fully.
Yeah. Yes.
Tyler, an interesting point here. The thing is that I'm running a farm in Sweden, and the price of wheat and oat have skyrocketed. The prices this year is double what it was last year. This is quite interesting because we now get 2 krona 30 öre per kilo, and that's almost what you pay for oatmeal in the shops.
Yeah, isn't there a food shortage going on around now for the world, really?
It's also going to be. Is my mic off? What just happened?
It's okay. We can hear you.
No, my mic's on. Okay. What's going to
okay.
happen is, as I said, the import and export of goods is going to get skyrocket high, because for the past 50 years, America has used its navy to protect all of the importing and exporting of all goods across the planet on the deep blue seas. They're no longer going to do that. So unless you have a navy to do it, and even if you do, the import and export pricing of everything is going to go sky fucking high. So that's why I keep telling people, grow your own food, get your own energy, and be very conscious of the geography in which you live if you are importing or exporting food or energy or water, and be very mindful of that, and where your country is getting its food and energy from.
Can this be considered an American exit?
Yes, it's called a decoupling. Yes, it's very well documented in Peter Zeihan's book called Disunited Nations. So take a look at that. And if you aren't the reading type, just go on YouTube and type in Disunited Nations and watch Peter Zeihan give it to you in a PowerPoint presentation. And it will blow your mind.
Tyler.
Yes.
To me is I know I've said it many times. I wish the rich people, the Elon Musks and other, can come up with a global solution because, like, look at the African population. 80% still lives in the countryside. Who doesn't even have access to, forget about the news we talk about in this room, but with nothing. So when people get really out of resources, no matter where, no matter what, how dangerous, they will just come to the rich people. It's like the African immigrants going through the Libyan waters and dying, even, capsizing, they still go. They just think that it's better on the other side. So they just come, even though they know that there is a huge chance they would die, right? So I'm hoping that it doesn't really matter how well informed, well educated, well off rich people can find a way to survive somewhere else, while the other people are going to just keep on coming, right? So it would be really nice if we come up with a global solution. That's my 5 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people, like, just as what Tyler's saying, like, people are being forced, right? So I forgot, was it Lebanon that moved to solar, or Libya that moved to solar? Because some people are just going to be forced to be renewable, right? And that's what we see happening regardless in all of our countries. And seeing that they want to build a dam between England and France, it doesn't surprise me because of the water levels rising as well. So we're just going to be forced to innovate, or at least patch the broken systems that we've created.
Yeah. So we went over by 15 minutes or so, but we will meet again tomorrow. Click on the title of the room to see the schedule. And a very big thank you to everybody for helping out with a bunch of fun headlines. Yeah, again, today we'll do it